Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your...
6 minutes, 2 minutes past 6, I should say. Good morning. It's Morning Glory. Sorry, I'm so excited because it's such a big day. Donald Trump's going to be president in a few hours' time. I can't stop smiling, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry about this, but I'm not going to apologise throughout the course of the show because, of course, it is an incredibly historic day. The 47th President of the United States of America will be sworn in at around about 5 p.m. this afternoon. We'll bring it to you live right here, of course, on Talk. We've got lots of great guests to talk to between now and 10 o'clock. We are here for the next 4 hours. Emma Wolf is here with me. We're going to look through some of the morning papers. We're going to look back at what happened over the weekend with the incredible and thankfully, safeguarding release of three of the hostages. 3 women hostages have been held for 470 days in those dark, ghastly tunnels beneath Gaza by those awful men who are all so brave that they got out their uniforms yesterday and started jumping around in Gaza as they gave the hostages over to the Red Cross, covering their faces, of course, because they're too scared to show them, wearing little green bandanas, going, look at me, I'm in Hamas. I'm a real great man. I rape women and kill children and dogs. Pretty brilliant. Fantastic. Well, thankfully, thanks to Donald Trump, those 3 women are now safe and they are with their families. We'll be talking about that throughout the day as well. But we've also got a bit of a problem for the Labour government because Keir Starmer, who's not in Washington for the inauguration because he wasn't invited, despite the fact that several world leaders have been invited, including Giorgia Meloni from Italy, it turns out that basically he's got 2 problems in life. Not only 2 problems, but just for starters, you've got Angela Rayner, who's under an ethics probe because she started to use civil servants to clean her new Grace and Favour home. Believe it or not, she's now living in a Grace and Favour home in London that was once occupied by Winston Churchill, right? She also ordered civil servants to help move some of her stuff from a gaffe somewhere else in London into this new place. Meanwhile, Sadiq Khan is also being probed for the use or getting some free Taylor Swift tickets. What is it with Labour apparatchiks and Labour high rollers and free Taylor Swift tickets? I don't understand. Meanwhile, there's also calls for a probe into the Attorney General, who appears to be a bit closer to Jerry Adams than is rather comfortable to be. Meanwhile, over in Davos, we've got, of course, the Chancellor, Rachel Thieves. She's got a department, believe it or not, that she set up called the Value for Money Department, which has just been ruled by the Treasury as, guess what? Not value for money. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Harry and Meghan are a bit distressed, by the way, by an article that appeared in Vanity Fair over the last few days. That's not very good. But the main event today, ladies and gentlemen, is Donald Trump becoming the 47th President of the United States of America. Yes, that's right. He's back.
God spared my life for a reason, to restore America to greatness. Together we can truly make America great again.
He is going to make America great again, and I think he's going to make not just America great again, but pretty much the world great again. We'll be getting right stuck into it. We want to hear from you, of course, as well. 0344 499 1000. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Well, it's Monday. It is an incredible day to be alive. It's the 20th of January. It is the day of the inauguration. It's going to be very cold in Washington, D.C., and so they're going to be doing it inside. The Guardian, believe it or not. Emma, very good morning to you, sorry. The Guardian, Trump to be sworn in on the same spot as the Capitol riot, i.e. in the Capitol building. I mean, what's wrong with them?
And they managed to get convicted felon and convicted criminal onto their front page. Yeah. Just watching the meltdown, the Liberal meltdowns today, Mike, is going to be quite fun.
America apparently, and also the BBC yesterday. I have to give a first shout out to Laura Kunsberg, who I was under the impression was beginning to sound reasonably sensible for a BBC journalist. Went completely doolally yesterday. Well, first of all, over the hostages, because she couldn't bring herself to call Hamas a terrorist organisation. Kept referring to them as Hamas, an organisation which has been prescribed as a terrorism organisation by some countries. And you're going, well, how about you just call them terrorists? It'd be simpler, wouldn't it? But she couldn't do that. And then every single question she had about Donald Trump to all sorts of people, including Piers Morgan, who was on the panel. But he's dangerous. But you know, you can't believe a word he says. But you know, Fiona Hill was there, who used to be Theresa May's advisor, and you should have seen how disappointed Laura Kunsberg was when she asked Fiona Hill, well, you were there with Theresa May when she went to meet Donald Trump. What was he like? And Fiona Hill said, actually, he was incredibly sensible. He had right on top of his brief. We saw him just after the inauguration in 2016.
Compos mentis.
He knew exactly what his brief was on all matters to do with defence. He was very, very good on detail. He was very engaged, and he wanted to talk to us about a great many things of mutual benefit to us. And Laura Kunsberg's face was just sort of falling with every single thing that she said. Yeah. Because they can't accept that Donald Trump is a very smart man who's been very successful and has now done something that only one other person in the world has ever done, which is to get back into the White House after being away for 4 years, you know? Grover Cleveland being the other one.
But it's worse than that, Mike. They cannot accept democracy. I mean, this man was voted in. I think we need to respect the will of the American people, which is, for me, it's so disrespectful, this endlessly banging on about how he's a convicted felon and all of this stuff. Right. Absolutely.
And these are the same people who say Elon Musk shouldn't be interfering in British politics.
Of course they are.
But they've got plenty to say about American politics.
Well, they've got plenty of Labour activists going around there. I think it's a shameful day that our Prime Minister has not been invited, is not there. Nigel Farage will be there, Boris Johnson will be there. Suella was at the airport yesterday with her
MAGA. Patel's there.
Absolutely, with her MAGA cap on.
Alex Phillips is there.
Alex Phillips, I know.
She's gone with Liz Truss. Liz Truss is also there.
Exactly. And what a day to be alive. And yesterday, what a day to be alive as well. I mean, unbelievably moving scenes. I got goosebumps from the hostages being released, but also just from watching Trump there.
Absolutely right. I mean, the headlines this morning are all very much focusing on the hostages, and we should look at those first. Thank you for bringing Emily home on the front page of the Daily Mail. One of the girls, Emily Damari, British, of course, raised in Beckenham in south-east London, had an emotional reunion with her mother. Her left hand is bandaged because 2 of her fingers were shot off by Hamas. They also killed her dog when they took her hostage from the kibbutz in October 2023. And what a terrible, terrible ordeal that they must have suffered. I mean, they looked remarkably well, considering. But we know from what's happened to other hostages and from tales that have been told that this was not a pleasant place to be for 470 days.
470 days. captivity in 15 months of captivity in these wretched tunnels, but also, you know, we just don't have the details yet. The psychological impact, the trauma, the anxiety, the depression, I mean, other hostages' parents have been saying, you know, my child was mentally, physically and spiritually broken. Yeah. I think we have to be aware. Some of them, they suggest even that some of the female hostages may have been impregnated and also pregnant.
Well, many of them were. When they had the first lot that were brought back, so many of them were actually pregnant, you know?
Yeah, and that's from, you know, barbaric rape by terrorists. And let's just be clear that what these young women have been through, and the rest of them have been through, we don't know yet, and we'll never know, but it will take a long, long time to even start to kind of recover or process what they've what they've endured.
The Sun front page: after 471 days of Gaza hell, home at last. Freed Emily Damari hugs her mum yesterday after a 470-day hostage nightmare at the hands of Hamas terrorists. You can't imagine it, can you?
No, and as you say, the scenes of the terrorists leaping around yesterday and covering their faces and all of that was absolutely despicable.
And what was interesting, watching the coverage yesterday on various different channels, was somebody actually said, you know, they won't even know probably the full detail of what happened on October the 7th because they were taken hostage and they were taken into a dark tunnel and probably had no access to any kind of television, no access to any kind of media at all. So they probably don't know even the full scale of how awful it all was.
Or that the world was waiting for them to be released, or that their families never gave up, or any of that. I mean, what just a blackout for them.
And they might not even know really how long they were gone.
Exactly. I was going to say, I mean, how would they know it was 15 months, 471 days?
Yeah, absolutely awful stuff. Front pages as well, also looking at Trump, as I say. Front page of the Financial Times: Trump poised to launch a blitz of 100 orders from day one. He's going to enact all sorts of policies that will fix whatever Joe Biden did. Actually, this morning that's changed to 200 orders. I think he's going to be actioning on the first day. It's going to be quite a remarkable period of time, I think, the next 4 years, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's a lot of people running scared. I love this from one of the Trump spokesmen. Their intention is to do shock and awe, so their opponents' heads are spinning. I mean, they're not messing around here. And also, this isn't just day one. This is, the Trump team have been working behind the scenes, not only for years, but for the last few months, really getting the detail, curbing immigration, dealing with all the kind of TikTok stuff, you know, increasing tariffs. Lots of exciting things are going to happen, I think, almost as he's sworn in.
Yes.
You know?
But of course...
And what a historic inauguration. First time in, I think, 40 years it's going to be indoors.
Yes.
Freezing temperatures in Washington.
They say it's partly because of all the freezing temperatures, but it may also be because of safety, one, because let's not forget, you know, there have been 2 attempts on his life already. Also, there are worries about drones, because drones are now such a prevalent problem that basically putting it inside, you're going to get rid of all of that, aren't you?
Well, exactly. And also, who can blame the man when you have been shot in the head? I mean, I can't imagine you feel particularly great at these huge outdoor events that somehow the police don't seem able to make secure.
Yes.
And as you say,
and also he will be doing what he's being instructed to do as well by his security team. The security team say, look, we'd just be a lot easier if we do it inside. Won't be so cold. But it means that all of the crowds that normally would be in the mall watching it won't be there. But of course, the naysayers and the anti-Trumpers will go, oh, well, that's because nobody's going to turn up. They seem to be forgetting that there's about 80 million people who voted for this guy.
I think there'll be quite a lot of crowds anyway. I think there'll be plenty of scenes and plenty of supporters.
Oh, of course there will. I mean, the whole party scene in Washington has been transformed, because what you've had 4 years of this moribund, you know, decrepit old git, quite frankly, you know, who can't stay awake for long enough to go to a party.
And the details as well coming out about Biden are really interesting, about just how unwell and how propped up he has been for the past few years.
Criminally, really, by the Democrat
sort of
establishment.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally. Right, let's have a look at last night's celebration rally in Washington, D.C., because there's a real, you know, I've lived in America, I know what it's like when they get a new president, and this is a real feel-good moment, I have to say, for Washington, D.C., which, as I say, has been steeped in this kind of, you know, really dull, really boring, really woke kind of, you know, presidency for the last 4 years, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Have a look at this. This is Make America Great Again.
Tomorrow at noon, the curtain closes on 4 long years of American decline, and we begin a brand new day of American strength and prosperity, dignity and pride. Bringing it all back. Once and for all, we're going to end the reign of a failed and corrupt political establishment in Washington, a failed administration. We're not going to take it anymore. We're going to stop the invasion of our borders. We're going to reclaim our wealth. We're going to unlock the liquid gold that's right under our feet, liquid gold. We're going to bring back law and order to our cities. We're going to restore patriotism to our schools, get radical left, woke ideologies the hell out of our military and out of our government. And we are going to make America great again.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I mean, how can you not like the guy? I mean, you just like him, right? Here's some of the things he's going to be doing. Declaring an emergency at the border. He's going to issue proclamations closing the border. He's going to designate cartels, drug cartels, as foreign terrorist organisations. Catch and release will be reinstated. Military will be directed to construct a new phase of the border wall. He's going to terminate Joe Biden's orders on energy drilling restrictions. He's going to return federal workers to in-person work, meaning no more working from home. Pausing all offshore wind leases. End DEI hiring practices in the federal government. You get hired on merit only. He's going to withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord again. He's going to order every agency to remove all federal actions increasing costs for Americans. And he's going to suspend the clearances for the 51 officials who lied about Hunter Biden's 2020 laptop story. So, I mean, that's just day one.
The DEI people are terrified. They're going to have to try and justify their literal existence.
Right.
But Mike...
Well, that woman that runs the Los Angeles Fire Department is going to be in for a bit of a shock, I think. You know?
Every single one of those points that Trump made about unlocking the liquid gold beneath their feet, about stopping the invasion of their borders, about, you know, just releasing the wealth and unleashing the wealth and
bringing back pride in your country.
Restoring patriotism and getting rid of woke in government and patriotism in schools. Every single point we could do with here. Every single one.
We need it here.
Apply to the UK.
Yeah,
and we
absolutely
desperately need it here, and we need a Trump who is like that, not Starmer, to be standing up and saying that.
Meanwhile, Keir Starmer sent a rather ridiculously worded many congratulations to Donald Trump.
It's like a Christmas card thing.
I know, and hopeful that we're going to have a meeting soon. Well, he's not there, and he's got some bad news from the Daily Mail. Basically, Keir Starmer... nobody in America knows who he is. Vox Pop reveals only 8 people in 100 in the United States have ever heard of him. When they were asked about, do you know who Keir Starmer is, someone said, is he a serial killer?
And this was in New York. Right? This was in Manhattan, right? Yeah. Where you might expect people to be slightly more kind of, you know, I don't know, politically aware or educated or whatever. In Manhattan, 8% of people, and some of them sort of went, vaguely, not really sure. They literally didn't know who he was.
No. Well, I bet you'd get the same problem here. A lot of people don't know who he is here, except for the fact that, you know, spent the weekend doing some very odd things, right? Because he was in Ukraine last Thursday, promising £4.5 billion. He's pictured playing football here on Sunday. Let's not forget that he went to Auschwitz with his wife on Saturday and posed for a picture. A lot of people are very critical of that. I know Nicola Sturgeon's done it in the past. Other people have done it. But it's really a bad look, it seems to me. I mean, if you want to go, his wife's Jewish, understandably, wants to go to Auschwitz. He's in Poland. He's taken her on this particular trip, obviously. Nobody knows what else he was doing in Poland. But I just think, why make a PR sort of statement and a stunt about the fact that he put out more than one picture.
I know.
Pictures of him walking around, pictures of him looking meaningfully at this, you know, watchtower.
Defiantly holding hands, the two of them.
It's just
no, I thought it was very inappropriate.
It doesn't look right to me.
No.
And a lot of people said the same on social media. They were like, why is he making this into some kind of, you know, look at me, I'm in Auschwitz?
I thought that was really inappropriate, actually. I mean, I've been there, and people filming things on their phones anyway feels just the atmosphere there is not somewhere you should be doing selfies or videos or whatever. But this, the scenes that we're seeing now, I thought was so not inappropriate.
Yeah. Just a bit tasteless, really.
Yeah,
you know?
Indeed.
It's not a political place. It's not a place to make a political point. You know, what's he trying to prove here? That he's some kind of, you know, compassionate bloke? You can't even put the wreath down. Look at him.
I know, he was struggling with that as well.
just useless. Just get rid. Just get rid of him. We've got lots more to do here. Emma Wolf is here. It's 19 minutes past 6. We're here, of course, for 4 glorious hours, minus 20 minutes right now, until 10 o'clock. And we have got so much to tell you about over the weekend. There's been so many amazing stories to do. Morning, Mike, says Michelle in Altrincham. Best show on TV. Very, very happy about Trump becoming President of the United States of America. Bring it on. I think so. Let's go America is what I was saying. And let's go Britain. And let's go Europe. Let's actually take a lead from Donald Trump. He's going to do it all right, and everybody here wants to do it all wrong. That's the problem. This is Talk. It's obviously a very horrid situation for everybody. There is some disquiet, is there not, at the very least, about the way that the authorities have handled all of this.
At the moment, I think people here are just in that panicked fight or flight mode. It really is. You're in the lap of the gods. Everybody's on edge. Nobody feels safe.
As you know, where I live is on fire right now. Literally, the entire city of the Pacific Palisades is burning.
Any message from you to Governor Newsom or Karen Bass tonight?
Spend less on hair gel. What can I say to them? Not big admirer of either.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
23 minutes past 6. Welcome back to Morning Glory. This, of course, is the place to be. It's the home of common sense, and it's the year of common sense. I've been talking about it since the beginning of January. We're 20 days in now, and it's time for the big inauguration party, because this afternoon at 5 p.m, our time, midday in Washington, D.C., Donald Trump is going to be made the 47th President of the United States of America. It's going to be an absolutely brilliant day. We're going to bring it all to you. Carolina in Bath says this. Good morning, Mike. Long live the Donald. God bless the 47th President of the USA. I thought this day would never come. It gives me goosebumps. Let's hope the Trump effect saves the UK from Keir Starmer. Well, I don't know whether it will, but I think it's going to be going some way towards fixing the entire world's kind of network of all sorts of things. We saw Mark Zuckerberg changing his views on Facebook. We've already seen the Middle East freeing up some hostages, Hamas freeing hostages, because Donald Trump said, if you haven't started releasing them by the time I'm in charge, there's going to be hell to pay. Of course, this was all covered by the BBC yesterday morning, Emma. Laura Kunsberg on her morning show on Sunday, who up until recently has actually been reasonably kind of sensible. She's asked all the right questions of some cabinet ministers that have been on. But yesterday she had an attack of the kind of the lefty word salad flu, I think she had. Here's what she kept saying about Hamas. Have a look at this.
At 9:15 British time, the ceasefire is now in force. Hamas, the group that's prescribed by many governments around the world, has revealed the names of the 3 hostages they are releasing today.
You know, let me help you out there, Laura. What you should have said was terrorist group Hamas, right? Let's hear it again.
At 9:15 British time, the ceasefire is now in force. Hamas, the group that's prescribed by many governments around the world, has revealed the names of the 3 hostages they are releasing today.
I mean, it's hard to believe. And that happened probably in minimum 7 to 10 times. Every time she mentioned Hamas.
By many governments around the world. She can't even bring herself to say a completely illegal organisation. You know, I mean,
I mean, to be honest, even just good journalese would dictate that you're going to edit that down to terrorist group Hamas. That's it. 3 words. You don't need any more words. You don't have to talk about whether it's prescribed by countries around the world, some including Britain. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
What is wrong with them? What is wrong?
Falling over themselves to complicate a sentence, right?
It's this inability to use the word terrorists and to properly label them and designate them.
And who is it do you think that they're pandering to here? Because it's pretty obvious that she will have a producer in her ear, no doubt, saying, or before the actual show going out, having a meeting, saying this is what we say every time we say Hamas. This is what we have to say.
Yeah, well, I'm afraid. I mean, I do radio on the BBC as well, and I've had the same experience repeatedly over the past sort of 3-4 days. Endless hours and hours and hours of interviewing Palestinians and Gazans, talking about Israel and how many dead Palestinians there are, and you know, a failure to accept the fact that October the 7th happened.
Have you tried calling Hamas a terrorist organisation to see what they say?
Yeah, and they don't use that term.
But do they correct you though?
No.
No, they let you say it.
They let you say it.
So you're allowed to say it.
You're allowed to say it.
Unbelievable stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, you know, when you say, well, where did this begin? They say, well, that's not the point. That, you know, thousands of people have been displaced. And of course, you know, one
and Sky were at it as well yesterday. They were interviewing, I think it's David Mercer, who we've interviewed here on this show. He's a member of the Israeli government. They were sort of questioning the way in which some of the Palestinian prisoners that they've got were arrested, right? And he said to them, look, this line of questioning is a pretty offensive one. You know, they're basically saying you've arrested children, you've picked them up on the streets, you know, when they were just sitting in their cars. I mean, as if no Palestinian has ever committed any kind of crime at all, you know? Incredible. And also Laura Kunsberg and the BBC only showed people celebrating in Gaza. They didn't show any sign of the jubilation in Israel
and the desperation and those families waiting and all of that. I know.
It's just absolutely awful.
Really shameful.
Now let's move on to the other state of play, which is of course the state of the cabinet, because already apparently there's not only are there now 2 ethics probes going on, but there's a 3rd one being called for. You've also got apparently number 10 tensions behind the scenes, where apparently they're all not getting on with each other. You know, so Bridget Phillipson's being attacked for being useless and trying to change the school curriculum without asking anybody. You've got Liz Kendall has been given a hard time for not working quickly enough. You know, it's all going horribly wrong. Angela Rayner, meanwhile, is reportedly under investigation because she asked staff for help with cleaning Admiralty House.
And moving her gear.
And moving her furniture, right, from one of her many houses. I don't know how many houses she's got now, but apparently she breached the ministerial code by asking civil servants to help her move into Admiralty House. Now, this is a grace and favour mansion in the middle of London, where I think John Prescott used to live, and I think where Winston Churchill once had as his abode as well. And apparently the allegation includes transporting furniture and cleaning the accommodation, according to a formal complaint about her conduct. Now let's have a look at what Angela Rayner said about the use of civil service, or shall we say the misuse of the civil service.
The ministerial code is clear that ministers will not use their position for personal gain or ask civil servants to help them in a private matter. Does the minister condone attempts to use civil service for personal matters?
Well, she may well ask herself that question now, because she's clearly now being investigated for doing exactly that.
And exactly,
Isn't it great,
it's a clear breach.
Isn't life grand?
This is a clear breach of, doesn't life come at you fast, Angela?
Yeah.
Because frankly, I mean, as you say, how many Grace and Favour homes or residents has she got now across London?
Yeah.
Across the UK, I think. Has she got her country house as well?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think she's allowed to use Dorney Wood from time to time.
I think she may have to share it, the 500 rooms with Reeves or someone.
With Lammy or something.
With Lammy, oh dear. Not sure about that.
Well, I mean, he's travelling most of the time. I mean, Rachel Reeves was in Davos today. Last Friday, we released the Starmer tracker, which is a bit like the Santa tracker, because they're not using it now.
And he really does appear to have spent more time abroad than in the UK.
Yeah.
It's absolutely...
And at any given time, so if anyone hears anything about any Labour ministers abroad, we want to know about it, because we'll add it into the tracker.
Oh, brilliant.
She's in Davos now, where apparently she's going to have the absolute mickey taken out of her by all other finance ministers, because she's wrecked the economy, for heaven's sake.
Well, I mean, we had Mel Stride yesterday just saying, look, we have a Chancellor who literally doesn't even know what she's doing. And yes, OK, he's the Shadow Chancellor. Of course, he's going to say that. But the damage that Reeves's budget has done to the economy is really, really shocking. I think they said it pushed up borrowing costs by about 12 billion. They were saying that those costs are basically would have paid for 300,000 nurses, would have paid for pensioners' winter fuel for decades to come. This is from all through the sheer incompetence of our Chancellor.
Absolutely ridiculous. Meanwhile, Sadiq Khan, who's not part of the Cabinet, but he considers himself to be a senior member of the Labour government, I suppose, because he's in London as the mayor. He's under investigation for a load of freebies that he took from what was described first as a football organisation, and then turns out to be some kind of events company. Gave him a load of free Taylor Swift tickets.
What is their obsession? What is the Labour obsession with Taylor Swift? I mean, she's a great singer and everything. Yeah. But this obsession with accepting freebies for concerts. You'd think some of these men, some of these guys, some of these politicians might actually be doing some work.
Well, you would think
not going out partying. Plus Sadiq Khan's bizarre outburst over the about Trump, and the resurgence of fascism across the West.
And he's been slapped down, hasn't he, now?
Deeply, deeply, unstatesmanlike to be writing nonsense like that just before the president of the free world is sworn in.
Yeah, talking about, the rise of fascism and the far right, which is their favourite phrase, across the world, and how dangerous it is. I mean, absolutely ridiculous, isn't it?
Does he not have enough to focus on in London with knife crime and people being, murdered on our streets?
You would think he might have. You would think he might have. But the thing about the probe into him and his behaviour is that he misled his people in the London Assembly, because he said, first of all, that these were football tickets that he got for free. He underpriced them because these were £500 tickets each.
Dishonest.
I mean, it's so dishonest, and they're just all on the take, a lot of them.
And
meanwhile,
the chap who's meant to be upholding the law, the Attorney General, Lord Hermer, he seems to be embroiled in a very, messy conflict of interest issue, which is just, and then using the Law Officers Convention to wriggle out of these things.
And this is Robert Jenrick who's calling for him to be investigated because of his close ties to Gerry Adams. We now know that they're changing the rules in Northern Ireland, so Gerry Adams might well be able to claim compensation from the British taxpayer, right? Turns out this guy, Hermer, represented Gerry Adams in another case where he's being taken to court by victims of the IRA. And when he was asked by officials, exactly how much money did you make, he went, oh, I can't remember. And it turns out he made about 30,000 quid.
And there are serious questions about his involvement with Chagos with asylum seekers, with the Chagos deal, which was then subsequently changed as soon as he came in, and he's using the Law Officers Convention to try and avoid scrutiny.
Yeah. It is ridiculous.
I think there are a lot of questions for Starmer right now on his top team.
Yeah, so many questions and so many parts of his government which are just simply not working very well. We've got Rachel Reeves as well under fire because she set up a company, by the way, or an organisation rather, about value for money.
Pointless quango, right? Absolute pointless quango.
And according to the Treasury Committee, who's been looking at it, they say this value for money office that was set up by Rachel Reeves is, guess what? Not value for money.
Not value for money.
It's actually called the Office for Value for Money.
Undefined, with no clear plan. And this is the job that the National Audit Office do. So they've set up this new value for money nonsense department with 12 full-time civil servants working there. Right. So that's quite a lot of money anyway. Yeah. This pointless department, which even a Labour, I think it was Meg Hillier, I think my MP, admitted it was a pointless quango.
Ridiculous.
What is she doing?
I know. Incredible.
Wasting money on a value for money department.
I know. It beggars belief. Now, I know how you're very much of a fan of Keir Starmer's video releases that he puts out on Twitter. This is one that he put out after his trip to Poland, before we knew that he'd been to Auschwitz, but he decided it was time. I don't know why he does this so much, but he does a lot of this. Here he is making another pointless statement about what it is that the government's apparently doing.
I grew up in an ordinary, hard-working family. We didn't have much, but we did know that there was a contract in Britain, that if you worked hard and did the right thing, then in return, the country would provide you with the security and the opportunity to get on in life.
Who's he talking to?
I don't know.
I mean, is he just talking to empty walls now, empty spaces?
Literally, who comes up with this nonsense?
I know.
He's done over. He's ruined the lives of so many vulnerable people, people who are hardworking and striving, who are trying to get on. It just beggars belief that he can come out with this stuff and that they're doing nothing, wrecking the country, and they think, I know, let's do another little pointless, sort of aimless promo video,
and as somebody pointed
showing
out,
pictures of him graduating.
And as somebody pointed out, every single video he puts out now gets ratioed, which for those of you who don't understand what social media ratioing is, it means that it gets less likes than it gets comments. It means that basically people don't like it. All it ever gets is comments which are negative as well. And he doesn't get any positive comments. So you think he would learn the lesson and say, maybe I shouldn't actually post this stuff.
The abuse that he gets, or I mean, not abuse, I'm not going to call it abuse, the comments that he gets on X, for example, when he puts out a video like that, when he puts out a pointless photograph with a stupid slogan, you would think someone would say, maybe let's step back and do some real work behind the scenes and stop pointlessly posing for photos and not turning up.
And telling us how well you're doing when you're not doing anything.
Oh, it's just embarrassing.
He keeps telling us you're doing change for the better. Well, you're not,
what does it actually, what was the point of that? What did he actually mean?
There wasn't any point. I don't think there was any point.
There's a contract that if you work hard, you'll get what?
You'll get on.
You'll get on, okay, right.
And then we'll tax you some more, and then you wish you hadn't bothered.
And then your phone will get stolen, and your child will get stabbed on a bus.
Yeah.
And then someone else will get the benefits that, you know, they've just arrived in the country. I mean, what?
I know. I've got a story for you about that, actually. It's coming up next about 2 asylum seekers just travelling around the country stealing whatever they fancy. Let's get a voice note from Phil.
Da 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 da. He's coming to save the West. Good old Donald. Must admit, got up this morning, bit of an extra spring in my step. Marvellous, isn't it? Stick it to Starmer, mate.
This is the thing. People are waking up this morning feeling good about life for the first time in a while, because Donald Trump is going to get into power and he is going to change the way the world sees an awful lot of what is going on. It's going to be fascinating. Charles Feldman's coming up next from Los Angeles. He's going to be telling us how excitable people are there. Obviously, they're still suffering from the aftermath of the fires, but the Trump inauguration is going to be front and centre this afternoon of everything that happens, basically. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:39. I'm Mike Graham. Jennifer says this, Mike, I absolutely can't wait for Donald Trump to become the president of the US. He absolutely deserves it. I've said it before, but I'm jealous that the Americans have got such an amazing president. I just hope now that we can have Nigel Farage in number 10 as soon as possible. Love watching you. Have a great show. Thank you very much, Jennifer. It's very kind. Yeah, I mean, I think people here are genuinely galvanised. And I think what that tells you, Emma, is how disappointing our own leader is. I mean, we were just saying, what's he going to be doing today? You know, he's not in Washington, D.C. Georgia Maloney's there. The president of Argentina's there. The president of Brazil's there. I think the president of China has sent his deputy. There's an awful lot of, you know, action going on in and around Washington, D.C. Our Prime Minister, supposedly the one with the special relationship, according to him anyway, is going to be sitting twiddling his thumbs in Downing Street.
And not only how disappointed we are, but I think how distressed we are at what's happening to our own country, but also the joy, the genuine, and I know lots of people are, you know, sobbing their snowflake tears over in America, but I think here and over the pond, how delighted and joyful it feels to finally see common sense, straight talking, all of the things, family values, you know, straight talking on the economy, straight talking on immigration, all of the things that people for years now have been feeling, well, am I crazy? Am I far right? Or am I just trying to kind of work hard and get on? And I think Donald Trump represents all of that, doesn't he?
Does.
Absolutely. And the tide of woke really is turning.
Yeah, and here's Prime Minister Keir Starmer's letter to the President incoming of the United States of America. On behalf of His Majesty's Government and the United Kingdom, I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Donald Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States. I mean, that's the first sentence. You already don't want to read the rest of it.
Literally drafted by a 17-year-old in his office.
I know.
How do we say? Do we say President yet? What do we put? And then he'll, you know.
I look forward to our next meeting as we continue our shared mission to ensure the peace, prosperity and security of our two great nations.
Look forward to our next meeting.
Oh, dear me. Let's talk to Charles Feldman, co-host of KNX News Radio in Los Angeles. Charles, very good morning to you.
Good morning. I like the interesting find you have there about President to be crowned today at U.S.
Well, this is the thing. You know, it's a very exciting moment for people in Britain because our Prime Minister, our leader, is such a dud that we're looking for anything to cheer us up, quite frankly. And the fact that he hasn't been invited is also pretty rum, considering that we're supposed to be the ones with a special relationship. So he's going to be sitting around watching it on TV like everybody else.
Yeah, and actually a lot of people will watch it on TV because, as you probably know, it's going to be so cold in Washington, D.C. that they've moved the ceremony to inside the Capitol Rotunda. They haven't done that since Ronald Reagan's second inauguration. It's a rare thing to do. So everybody's going to have to watch it pretty much on TV.
Yeah. It seems like a pretty party atmosphere in Washington, D.C. right now. I mean, we watched some of the rally from last night. We know lots of British people who have gone over there, and obviously Nigel Farage is there, Liz Truss, former Prime Minister, is there. There's an awful lot of British politicians who are not from the Labour side, because Labour actually campaigned on behalf of Kamala Harris, unfortunately, which didn't really help them either. So it appears, anyway, to be quite a sort of a big moment for America, doesn't it?
Well, it's a huge transition. I mean, look, first of all, look at the history that we're talking about. There's only one other person who ever became president twice. So it's a rare event in American history. And the history in the past couple of years since he left office for Donald Trump, in and of itself, makes it historic. I mean, we do have to remember that despite whatever pluses he has, he does come to the office again as a convicted felon. So there is that. And that does make it a very unique
But it's such a serious felony that he's not going to serve any time in prison, and nobody really cares, do they?
Well, that was the reason why he's not serving any time in prison. Is that was basically a deal that was reached with the prosecutors in New York State. It was a local case, not a federal one. And
it was a local case about some mixed up accounting, wasn't it? More or less.
Well, right. It was about basically, you know, this was the Stormy Daniels, money that he her and but the judge in the case said that he felt that it was not appropriate because it would be impractical to give him any kind of a sentence, fine, probation,
Yeah, but everybody knows, really, Charles, why that case was brought. Everybody knows where it was brought there because they knew that they would get a conviction. You know, I don't really think it's worth spending any more than about 3 seconds on, since we're going to have, you know, what is the beginning of the end of the wokists, because I think that's a far bigger story. Let's have a look at what Donald Trump's got to say about executive orders.
Oh, you're going to have a lot of fun watching television tomorrow. Somebody said yesterday, sir, don't sign so many in one day. Let's do it over a period of weeks. I said, like hell, we're going to do it over weeks. We're going to sign them at the beginning.
I mean, I'm sorry, maybe you and I are just going to have a different opinion on this. I just find him a very entertaining individual, you know?
No, look, I haven't spoken with him in a good number of years. Actually, I think it was 2004 the last time. But I knew him fairly well in New York City in the late 80s and 90s, when he was just, and I put that in quotes, just a real estate developer. And I spent a lot of time in his office, frankly. And he is a very charismatic, and in private and in person, he can be a very funny guy. But of course, in the 80s and 90s, nobody actually thought, myself included, that he would be president of the United States someday. That just didn't occur to anybody. I can tell you that.
Right. But let's not forget how bloody awful Joe Biden has been in the past 2 years, even if you don't count the first 2 years, you know. But we now know that he was, in fact, being propped up effectively by a whole series of individuals and aides and his wife when he was not really up to the job. And so, well, for all those people who say, you know, it's an absolute disgrace that Donald Trump is now the president for the second time and he's going to ruin the country and he's very dangerous, I mean, they don't seem to have much to say about a man who was doing the job, who was clearly not up to it.
Well, and there was a very good, I believe it was a New York Times piece today about just that there were an awful lot of people in the White House, and you're right, including Biden's family, that recognized quite some time ago that, you know, he wasn't the same guy who ran for president initially, and that he was deteriorating both physically and in his mental capacities, and yet, you know, kept the myth going that he was, you know, vital, and that, you know, almost every other day they wheeled somebody out from his cabinet to say something along the lines of, oh, we saw the president this morning, and and so he was vigorous. And it turns out that that wasn't entirely, and I'm being generous by saying that, it wasn't entirely.
Well, it was a lie, wasn't it? Let's face it. But let's get
That's
another.
one way to put it.
Let's get well, that's what we call a lie, something that isn't true. Border Control's our Tom Homan here on some of the opposition they might face.
We're going to take a lot of hate. We're going to be sued every day, numerous times. I think you'll see the left try to control the media. They're going to show the first crying female, first crying child, and say how inhumane we are. But they won't talk about 340,000 children that they've failed to take care of. They're not going to talk about the young women who have been murdered in this country at the hands of criminal cartels. We're not going to talk about the hundreds of angel moms and dads who buried their children. You want to talk about family separation? They buried their children because their children were killed by a member of a criminal cartel or someone that's not supposed to be here.
I mean, I guess that's the one question that I would have, is how successful will Donald Trump's plan on cutting back on immigration be? I mean, he's talked about mass deportations. He's talked about, you know, ending the freedom of movement across the border. How easy is that going to be for him to do?
Not very. He's planning on signing a bunch of executive orders, in fact, right after his inauguration, including his so-called mass deportation order. But what makes that so difficult is that the states pretty much control the local law enforcement apparatus. And depending on the state, some states are very much in alignment with what Trump wants to do. Some states, such as the one I'm sitting in now, California, is not pretty much in alignment with what Trump wants to do. And in fact, the Los Angeles Police Department, for example, is barred by city statute from giving any aid or assistance to federal officials who might be out to deport even criminals. They're just not allowed to get involved. So
well, as the police. As the police.
As the police, they're not allowed to. Isn't it? They can't aid and abet federal law enforcement in an effort for deportation, because we are a so-called sanctuary state, and Los Angeles is a so-called sanctuary city. So the political infrastructure of the state and the city is such that it is diametrically opposed to what Trump wants to accomplish in terms of deportation.
That's extraordinary, isn't it? Let's finish up, because we're out of time, Charles. Thanks very much indeed, with the YMCA. Now, back in favour, I suppose, as a song. Check this out.
Come on, everybody! It's fun to stay at the YMCA. Fun to stay at the YMCA. They have everything for your men to enjoy. You can hang out with all the boys. Fun to stay at the YMCA. Fun to stay at the YMCA.
The Village People, of course, now saying it's not a gay song, you know, because I imagine there are some parts of Trump's support who would perhaps not be in favour of that. But they've now reinvented themselves. Go, no, it's not a gay song at all. Ridiculous. What a ridiculous thing to say. But doesn't that tell you how far America has fallen, where you've got California, where the police in Los Angeles are told that they can't aid and abet, which is normally associated with a criminal act, the law enforcement authorities from the federal government in kicking out foreign criminals.
Absolutely.
Unbelievable.
And for all these executive orders that are coming into effect from day one, there's a lot of work to undo the damage that has been done to our society and to our countries, really.
Absolutely. Charles Feldman, thank you very much indeed for that. Let's get a voice note from Tracy.
Morning, guys and girls. What a great day. Baked cake yesterday, got some champagne in. Going to work this morning, be home and ready and waiting with my champers at 3 o'clock. What a great day, world. Golden times are coming.
You're going a bit early there, Tracy, to be honest, because it's not starting till 5.
Yeah, she'll start on the champagne
make sure you
at 3.
Don't start the champagne at 3, because you might miss it. But anyway, yeah, it is a great day. We've got great stories to tell you about as well, including a couple of asylum seekers here who appear to be given free rein to roam around the country, stealing whatever they want, jumping on trains, not paying for the, unbelievable stuff. Plus, of course, we'll get a mention for Harry and Meghan, who are apparently distressed by an article that's been written about them in Vanity Fair. The poor diddums. This is Talk. It's obviously a very horrid...
As government borrowing costs hit a 27-year high and the pound is taking a pounding. Gloomy economic data is expected to show inflation and growth are off course.
Let me ask again, and can you please be clear? Will Rachel Reeves be your Chancellor for the duration of this parliament?
Rachel Reeves is doing a fantastic job. She has my full confidence. She has the full confidence of the entire party.
Can Rachel Reeves hold on as Chancellor?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham, and we are here, of course, all the way through until 10 o'clock in the morning. It's a big day. It's the Inauguration Day, 20th of January, for Donald Trump, second-time president, 47th president. Only two people in the history of the world have managed to do what he's done. He's one of them, obviously. The other one's Grover Cleveland. Lest we tell you about that, the better, because it was a very long time ago. Let's talk, though, about Harry and Meghan, because they're distressed, we're told this morning. I started reading. There's a huge article in Vanity Fair. Yeah. They're on the cover. Apparently, they were asked if they wanted to talk, and they didn't give an interview to Vanity Fair, but instead there's a whole litany of stories from people who worked for them, who say how ghastly it was working for them and how terrible she is to people. And it wasn't so much about shouting and sort of, you know, bawling. It was a lot about kind of, you know, what you might call microaggressions, what they would call microaggressions, and just kind of cutting people out of the whole scene.
Very manipulative, very, I mean, a lot now, as you say, a lot of sources now saying that Meghan in particular is an extremely bullying, dominating, manipulative kind of employer. And like,
if you're in the band, it's great.
If you're in, it's
but if
fine.
you're out, it's horrible.
Or if you do something wrong or anything. And look, there are quite a few staff members saying they've actually had to go into therapy over this. Right. You know, people just stepping away from their jobs with Meghan, saying, I couldn't work for myself, I couldn't look at myself in the mirror anymore. And this is Vanity Fair, Mike, and they cozy up to all the celebs because they really want those front pages.
Yeah, they really do.
And this 8,000-word article just shows how the tide has turned.
Yeah.
In the US.
Basically, America's fallen out of love with them in the same way that we did, right?
And they call them bores, and they call, you know, I mean, there's Harry pitching a podcast about sociopaths. Well, has he looked at his wife recently?
I love his guest list as well. Who do you want to get on this podcast? Well, I thought I'd get Donald Trump, the Pope, and he's also said at some point or other, apparently in the making of these, or the suggested making of them, that he thinks he might have become a sociopath because of what happened to him when he was a child. And he basically has been repeating all these conspiracy theories. He believes his mother was murdered.
British media has ruined his life. And we've got this exciting, very exciting court case tomorrow, haven't we? I think it's coming to the High Court tomorrow.
Yeah, it is.
So all eyes on Harry tomorrow. I think it's going to be finally the end of this absolute nonsense.
It will be,
but the US are sick of it.
Yeah.
The US are sick
They've had enough of them, basically.
They've had enough of the endless kind of victimhood, blaming others, and they say the blinding lack of self-awareness.
Yeah.
And at the beginning they were totally, you know, overwhelmed by how wonderful Harry and Meghan were, and how racist the UK was, and how nasty we were.
Well, because that Oprah Winfrey interview set the stall out. Turns out it was all wrong.
All nonsense.
There was, what, 27 errors in what they said?
Absolutely.
And then when he was given the chance,
and
you remember when he was given the chance with Tom Bradby to correct it or to back it up, he said, I never called the family racist. And it was like, well, you did actually.
Yeah, you did.
Not much time left, so let's talk about these two asylum seekers who've been left free to shoplift designer items to order because they said they needed money for food and clothes. This despite the fact that they were being given money by the Home Office. The thing that struck me about this is they were at the John Lewis store in Bluewater near Kent, or in Kent rather, just before Christmas. Franz Pentrius, whose family all live in Africa, and Tobias Lilika, who's also got his family in Africa. They haven't come with them. He stole a £550 Coach handbag.
This is really serious designer gear.
Yeah, it's not really what you need to have for yourself when you say you haven't got anything to eat, is
this is not stealing babies' nappies or milk for your children or food or any of the basics in life, and that's going to go straight into
And they're basically professional shoplifters,
They're professional shoplifters, and they're doing this kind of thing with impunity. And I was actually at Bluewater the other day talking to someone. In M&S, they said they don't bother putting tags on stuff because now it costs more to have staff. So shoes and things like that, high value stiletto shoes, they say they can't have staff taking them off. So now it's all self-service because they can't really afford to employ staff chase up, to pursue
It's just
shoplifters.
ridiculous.
The whole thing is...
Probation officer also told the court how he got £40 a week from the Home Office, helping financially, and he was suffering because he got fined for not having a train ticket when he went to Cornwall on a trip and couldn't get a lift back.
Cornwall?
He's going to go, well, how's he just going on trips around Britain, shoplifting, getting paid by the Home Office? It's absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, meanwhile, final story, which we've got about 10 seconds for. Apparently smartwatches make you more anxious.
Well, it was
So don't wear
ridiculous.
'em.
Wearable tech, nonsense, tracking your sleep, tracking your bowel movements, tracking your intake and your fluid, this and that. And then your heartbeat gets so irregular because you're so anxious that you only had half an hour's sleep that you will have a heart attack.
It's mad. That's it. First hour, done. Morning Glory.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome to Morning Glory. It's 2 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. It is, of course, Monday morning. It is the 20th of January, and that can only mean one thing. It's Inauguration Day. That's right. Donald Trump getting inaugurated today in Washington, D.C. It all kicks off just before 5 p.m. our time. That's midday in the US of A, in Washington, D.C., which is so cold that they've decided they're going to have the inauguration actually take place inside the rotunda of the Capitol building. The Guardian says it's taking place in the same place that the Capitol riots took place in. Yeah, that would be the Capitol building where the Capitol riots took place. I mean, it's not difficult, this stuff, is it? It's almost like watching the BBC reading The Guardian, where you go, oh, but he's a convicted felon, isn't he? Well, yeah, but so what? You know, he's been convicted of a very, very minor offence, which of course was only brought because of political reasons. It was brought in New York by a local attorney who was in fact nothing to do with the federal government and everything to do with Manhattan Southern District, which is of course famously very anti-Trump. So we're not going to talk much about that. We're going to talk instead about the glorious nature of the world becoming a safer place, a better place, a less woke place. And we're also going to talk about the fact that even knowing that Donald Trump was coming in today made Hamas give up 3 hostages yesterday to the Israelis. And thank goodness 3 young women were able to be reunited with their families after spending 471 days underground in those ghastly tunnels underneath Gaza City, thanks to a brutal, ghastly terror gang known as Hamas. The BBC doesn't like to call them terrorists. The BBC likes to say that they're prescribed by some countries as a terrorist organisation. Well, I'm not having that. We're calling them terrorists straight up, straight down. And they're so brave, aren't they? When they decided to hand over the hostages yesterday, they got their uniforms out, they got their balaclavas out, they covered up their faces, and they put those green bandanas around, and they waved their AK-47s around like big, brave men who go around shooting dogs, raping children and raping women. Marvellous, isn't it? Absolutely disgraceful. We'll be talking about that coming up very shortly. Also, we'll be talking about the court cases that are coming up today as well. We'll tell you more about those in a moment. But absolutely, the day is all about Donald Trump right now, and he is back.
God spared my life for a reason, to restore America to greatness. Together we can truly make America great again.
Make America great again. He's the 47th president, only second president in the history of the United States who have won a return trip to the White House with 4 years in between. The other one being a guy called Grover Cleveland. Let's hear what you've been saying this morning about Donald Trump.
Da, 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 da.
What a great day. Baked cake yesterday, got some champagne in.
What a great day. Trump's going to be in power, and I hope his first executive order is to send the Prince of Darkness packing.
And there you go. Send those voice notes in. 03444991000 is the number. What a great morning, says Mum. The Donald and Melania, she's stuck by him. I love him. Today will be fun. All the whining from colleagues, I can't even show too much joy. Free speech ain't the thing up here. Great show, great day. Have a ball, says Claire. I don't know whether that means... I think that's Mon, the Donald, that should have said. This one from David. Hi, Mike. I think that it is also important to remember that this is Martin Luther King Day in the United States. Is it? The man who advocated for seeing another person for who they are and not for the colour of their skin. However, the lefties have managed to completely turn his message on its head, take the ground that they accuse the right of holding in creating a race-obsessed world. That's Dave, who's currently in the Netherlands. Roy says, Mike, don't forget the important trial starting today. Yeah, there are 2 big trials starting today. One, of course, Labour councillor Ricky Jones. He's on trial for encouraging violent disorder. That starts today. He denies the charge. The second one, of course, is the trial of Axel Ruda Cabana, who's accused of the murders of Alice De Silva, Aguiar, B.B. King and Elsie Dot Stancombe, that Taylor Swift-themed dance class in Southport on the 29th of July of last year. Now, both of these cases will get underway today. We're not sure exactly what will happen over the course of that day. We will report exactly what happens in the court, because the reason why we don't report on these things when they're active is because we're not permitted to. The laws of contempt say that you can only report on the court proceedings as they happen. So as those court cases get underway, we will bring you all of the action from those courtrooms, because we'll be breaking news on that throughout the course of the day. Roger says, Mike, the best thing about today is that the lefties and the woke brigade will hate the Trump inauguration. Well, they will. Absolutely right. Now, just before we speak to our next guest, Shirley Pinto, former member of the Israeli Parliament, I just want to bring something to your attention. Now, I don't know about you, and this is not a news story, by the way, but it's a news story for me, so this is why I'm going to tell you about it. I did one of those things where I did a bit of washing last night, took the stuff out of the dryer, suddenly thought, oh, blimey, I must have left a coin in my pocket. Now, I don't normally have coins in my pocket anymore because if I have some cash, usually I don't really carry coins around. I carry some notes around, right? It turns out I went to buy something yesterday and all of their computers were down, so it was a cash-only deal. And they gave me a 50p coin in change, which I didn't realise. Now, I took it out of the dryer last night, and I think we've got a picture of it. I'm not sure if there's an ability to put it up. It may not be quite ready yet. But it's a 50p coin. It's from 2020. It's got the Queen's head on it, right? But on the other side, it says a little slogan. And the slogan says, "Diversity built Britain." Now, there it is. Diversity built Britain. Now, I don't remember asking anyone to put slogans on 50p pieces. I'm going to ask you a question straight up, because you may know more about this than I do. When did they start doing this? Because I've never seen a slogan on a 50p piece before. And if there are slogans on 50p pieces, what other slogans have they got? Diversity didn't build Britain. It's not even true. What do they mean, diversity built Britain? What is it all about? And this, of course, would have happened under the Tories. It came out, this was minted in 2020, it says here. Bizarre, isn't it? Haven't seen anything like that? Because I certainly haven't. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. We'll take all of your voice notes, all of your calls. Tony says, Mike, happy Trump Day. YMCA all day on a loudspeaker. I think you probably might get a bit sick of it, but it's a great song, and all credit to the village people for having their resurgence. Let's speak now to Shirley Pinto, former member of the Israeli Parliament. This morning, all the papers have got the story on the front page, from terror captive to her mother's arms, and that's particularly the British hostage, Emily Damari, who smiled defiantly as she came out of the truck that she was delivered by Hamas to the Red Cross. And thank goodness the three young women were able to walk to safety. Absolutely incredible stuff, because so much work went into it. Emily Damari, she's 28 years of age, 471 days underground with Hamas. Just incredible. So a lot of the papers obviously focusing very much on her, but two other women who came out as well. Absolutely incredible days, incredible scenes. Shirley Pinto's here. Shirley, very good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning for all the British who are watching us. It's a very complicated day for us in Israel. We are very excited, but we're still hurt. All our feeling that we are feeling, it's happy and sad together. Because in one side, finally, 3 women hostages came back to their family from the terrorist organization Hamas. Since October 7, 2023, they didn't know what happened in Israel. Don't know if their family are alive. They kidnapped from them dead. Murders that take them, rape them, hurt them, and babies. And they're really true heroes who survive all these days. But in the same time, we have more hostages in Hamas captivity. This deal is not a good deal for us. But if you are doing a deal with the devil, it's never going to be a good deal. We release 3 innocent people, civilians, and we give for them, for exchange, murders that murder people here in Israel, terrorist people. 3 innocent people. We saw the video that the terrorist organization Hamas wearing their uniform, and 2 women. It's a light against the darkness. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's just awful, isn't it? You can't, I mean, I can't imagine. I was watching it yesterday.
We cannot understand it. And all the world is quiet.
Yes. Well, we haven't been quiet here at Talk because we've been very much looking forward to this day. And while, as you say, it's very difficult because of the complications and because of the fact that so many hostages are still being held, how hopeful are you that the next phase of this, which is to release more hostages, will go ahead smoothly?
We don't know which hostages are alive, which hostages are dead. In this Saturday, we're going to get more hostages. I hope we're going to get more release hostages deal, but we don't know who is going to come back. We don't know if they're alive or dead. Hamas does not give us any details about them. The Red Cross never visited them in these all 471 days. They didn't visit them.
Right.
Hamas is a terrorist organization, And we must, after we release all hostages, to destroy Hamas. We cannot let him to control Gaza.
Exactly right.
We cannot let them to. We are in the state of Israel. I am on the south of Israel right now, where, like you can see, Gaza it's very close to the place that I am sitting right now. And there is a place that there is a terrorist that can come anytime they want and kill me just because I'm a Jewish, just because I'm an Israeli.
Right.
It's crazy. The state of Israel must defend herself and her civilians.
It is incredible that they can do that, but I suppose the difficulty I would guess is how is it that you can dismantle Hamas completely? Because somebody told me yesterday that with every killed Hamas fighter, there is now another one to replace him.
Of course, that is why we cannot destroy the idea of Hamas. We must change. To change after our thinking, we must to give another organization, like another country, Arab country around the world, that want peace to control Gaza and help the civilians there to live there in a good condition. Because we cannot have a deal with a terrorist organization. We have to give to another country to control them. And
so, what will Benjamin Netanyahu be able to do? After, say, Saturday, are talks still going on with Hamas? Are there still hopes that something will break?
I think that this deal it's not a good deal, and unfortunately, it can break any time because we get only 3 hostages instead. After 471 days, it's changed 400 of terrorism that we released for them. Right. So every day, this fire, you can call like that, can break. We have the first step of the deal, and after that, we have the second step of the deal. We don't know if we can complete this deal, but we have to do everything. Also, in a political way, to release our hostages and to get the control from Gaza, from Hamas, and give it to a safe organization that can take care for her civilians. There is a 7 country around Israel that want to destroy us. Think about British. If you have on your border a lot of enemies that want to destroy Britain, what do you want to do?
Yes. No, I can.
Every country has the right to defend herself.
Sure, absolutely. And Shirley, I totally agree with you. And let's hope that something is done to completely get rid of Hamas, because that's the only solution, it seems to me, that would work. Shirley Pinto, former member of the Israeli Parliament, thank you very much for speaking to us. Of course, alongside Emily, who was released yesterday, Emily Damari, also Doran Steinbrecher, who's 31, and Romy Gonen, who's only 24. They also were released as well. And it has to be said, obviously it's too early to tell how traumatised these young women will be, but they actually did look reasonably healthy. Probably more healthy than anyone expected them to look after spending 471 days in that hellhole beneath the streets of Gaza. Absolutely disgraceful, disgusting, and still many hostages being held. More will be released apparently on Saturday. The ceasefire appears to be holding for right now. But as you just heard there from Shirley Pinto, you can't continue to live side by side with a terrorist organisation. Great piece in the Sunday Times yesterday talking about what happens next in Gaza, and there is only one way forward, and that is to get rid of Hamas once and for all, and to give somebody else the opportunity to govern that particular part of the world, because as long as Hamas are there, they are going to want to destroy Israel, and that's never going to be peaceful, and it's never going to work. 17 minutes past 7, this is Talk.
the fans who were there, okay, they were hand-picked, but they all said that when they were talking Villa, it wasn't. He knew exactly what was going on with regard to the team, the transfers, how they've been playing, and he did say that as soon as he got home, he'd be watching the game. Luckily, the Aston Villa won 1-0, so that would have pleased him, and as it did me as well. But he shows that when it comes to Aston Villa, this is not a fake fan moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:20. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. It's Inauguration Day in America. It is morning in America, as Ronald Reagan once said, because Donald Trump is taking over at 5 o'clock this afternoon. The inauguration will start, and by shortly thereafter, he will be the 47th President of the United States of America. Let's get a voice note from Kenny.
What a great day for America, and a great day for the West, and a great day for the world. Donald Trump is going to make the world peaceful again, and he's going to make the global economy stable again. This is a great day for humanity. It's a great day for hope and prosperity.
I think you're absolutely right, Kenny, and it's a great day for America. He's going to make America great again, but as a result of that, it's going to transfer over, I think, to Europe, certainly to the UK, and to the Middle East. It's already happened. We've now got 3 hostages released. Still a long way to go, but thankfully those 3 young women reunited with their families yesterday. It was a very moving day for them, a very emotional day for them. Of course, the BBC couldn't quite bring themselves to celebrate it in the way that most normal people would, and the Hamas characters managed to find their uniforms again. They're so brave, aren't they? They put those masks on so you can't tell who they are. They put the green bandana on and they wave guns around, and they all hang about together. It's all very weird, all very strange. Let's talk to Ben Habib, former Deputy Leader of Reform UK, of course. Ben, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
So, it can be done. You know, suddenly Donald Trump doesn't even have to get into power before he puts a bit of pressure on Netanyahu, a bit of pressure on Hamas, and suddenly now we've got some young women being back with their families again. It's a fantastic day, isn't it?
It's a fantastic outcome, and I mean, we're all obviously delighted for peace in the Middle East, and I very much hope that this ceasefire will hold and that the subsequent hostage negotiations that have to take place, because I think the first phase is agreed with 30-odd hostages being released, but after that, I think there's a matter of having to agree the rate at which they're released and who's released and the number of prisoners that the Palestinians get in return from Israel. So it's going to be quite a fraught process, I suspect, as we move forward. But, you know, it might be a good moment just to reflect on what Israel has achieved during the last 14, 15 months, which is effectively the complete political neutralization of Hezbollah, the neutering of Iran in many respects as a power broker and, you know, the force behind these proxies in the Middle East, and also the beginning of the breaking of the Houthi rebels, not to mention the significant damage obviously made to Hamas.
Right.
I think what was, if there's any kind of disappointment for me personally, looking at what happened yesterday in Gaza, was the strength that Hamas seemingly still have. You know, as you say, they came out with their uniforms back on, but they all looked incredibly healthy, these fighters. You know, well armed with body armor and everything else.
Whatever happened to that famine that kept us apparently looming on the horizon? You know, every bleeding week for about a year, there was going to be a famine, you know, and isn't it disgraceful that the Red Cross, you know, one of the lefty, you know, charities apparently, never bothered to go and visit these hostages while they were incarcerated in those tunnels, not once.
No, not once. And I mean, I really would have liked to have seen Hamas a shadow of its former self, but it looks like trouble in Gaza is going to continue. Anyway, peace is a good thing. And I was delighted, as you were too, to see that those young ladies look remarkably healthy. You know, who'd have thought that after, what did you say, 400 odd days
471 days, yeah.
Yeah, it's a long time to be underground, isn't it?
It's just awful. Just awful. And we know from the other hostages that have been released that they were all mistreated badly. They were sexually assaulted, no doubt. You know, some of them were pregnant when they came out before these three did. So, you know, absolutely disgusting and disgraceful behaviour from these characters. There was a great piece in the Sunday Times written yesterday about what happens now in Gaza, and they reckon that only about 16% of the people of Gaza would now vote for Hamas if there was actually an election. So there's going to be a sort of diplomatic effort, I suppose, coming from the Trump side as well, to try and enforce a different view from Hamas. You know, somebody else has to run Gaza, because if Hamas is still running it, there's never going to be peace.
I mean, you've hit the nail absolutely on the head. And what needs to emerge from this, assuming Hamas is a weakened political and military force, is an intervention from the West so that Gaza is produced in our image, not in Hamas's image.
Right.
You know, so we rebuild their institutions, making sure as much as possible that they're free of these kind of militant and extremist terrorist elements. I don't know whether that's going to be possible or not, but that has to be an aim.
Yeah.
You know, when you look at our interventions in other parts of the Middle East, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, Iraq, they've been bad because we've had no joined up thinking about what happens after our military bombardments or our military, you know, boots on the ground.
Right.
And it's that second phase that's so important for world peace and making sure that we don't have the, you know, resurgence of violence again. And I really hope we have some joined up thinking on what happens now that, you know, this seems to be coming to an end.
Well, I don't know if we can rely on the Labour Party for any of that, because, of course, David Lammy thinks he should be arresting Benjamin Netanyahu if he steps foot in Britain. And also, let's have a look at these two characters, right? These two bozos from the weekend. There was a pro-Palestinian march on Saturday. 77 arrests, amongst them people who were pushing into an area which they were told not to go into because there was a synagogue there in Great Portland Street. Have a look at who was there. John McDonnell, the former Shadow Chancellor, and Jeremy Corbyn, the former leader of the Labour Party, both there, both who are now being sought by the police for questioning. Let's have a look at what they were getting up to on Saturday as part of the march. They were part of the group of people who were pushing their way through. You can see John McDonnell there trying to push his way through the line. And nothing yesterday, by the way, from Jeremy Corbyn. He's got lots of tweets out about the Palestinian march, but nothing about how happy he would be that the hostages have now been released.
No, I mean, it's typical. And what you know, there have been two dimensions to this conflict, haven't there? There's been the military conflict in the Middle East, but we've had our own problems in the UK, and they're not entirely of the same root. I think what we've been seeing in the UK with these marches are really the root of those marches. It's something more malign. You know, it's a kind of anti-British sentiment that runs through these marches.
Yeah.
And to see Jeremy Corbyn and John marching alongside these people who are basically anti-British, anti the values and culture, you know, of this country.
And they're anti-Israeli as well.
I mean, they're obviously anti-Israeli. I mean, they want to wipe Israel out for whatever they say. They want Israel to cease to exist.
Right.
But to see people who potentially might have been our Prime Minister and Chancellor of the Exchequer marching alongside them, it just tells you how wrong we've gone as a country.
Absolutely.
And, you know, why aren't these people actually now doing collections of money for the rebuilding of Gaza? Instead of marching up and down the streets, gesticulating violently at policemen and wasting taxpayers' money, why aren't they doing something positive for the rebuilding of Gaza?
Well, do you remember, you know, back in the day when October 7th happened and the first sort of pro-Palestine marches happened that very day? The first one happened on October the 7th, you know, anti-Israel march after that horrible day of massacring and hostage-taking. They were calling for a ceasefire, right? And they've been calling for a ceasefire for the best part of a year and a half, and now that there is a ceasefire, they're not happy.
No, they're still marching, which tells you it's actually more than just about Israel.
Yeah.
This is a divide in British in British society. These flags, the Palestinian flags that they flaunt as they go on these marches, it's really an anti-British sentiment.
It is.
They're not really supporting Palestine. I don't think these people give two hoots about the Palestinians. It's their domestic political issues in the United Kingdom, and they're using Palestine as a conduit to express those anti-British sentiments. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
And you know, I imagine I may not be the majority view, but that's what I see in these Palestinian marches. Deeply anti-British, actually.
Yes, I think you are. I think you are a part of the majority view, actually. But let's have a look at what the BBC makes of it all. I was shocked. I don't know if you watched it yesterday. Laura Kunsberg, who up until recently has been relatively sensible, completely lost the plot yesterday. Couldn't understand why anybody would trust Donald Trump. Couldn't understand why anybody would be happy that Donald Trump was going to be the next president. Also, continually refused to refer to Hamas as a terrorist organisation. Have a look at this.
At 9:15 British time, the ceasefire is now in force. Hamas, the group that's prescribed by many governments around the world, has revealed the names of the 3 hostages they are releasing today.
Hamas, the group that's prescribed by many countries around the world.
Yeah,
as I said earlier, surely it would be simpler and more journalistically correct to refer to them as the terrorist group Hamas. I mean, that would be simple, wouldn't it?
That would be simple. But, I mean, they've got real issues, haven't they? They've tied themselves up. And again, it's a kind of... Again, I come back to it, Mike. It's an anti-British sentiment that's running through. And, you know, I heard Shirley, the former MP from the Israeli parliament you had on earlier, and she said, what if the United Kingdom was surrounded by countries that wanted to destroy it? Well, actually, we have a pretty anti-pathetic European Union across the channel that isn't wholly friendly, but we've got elements in the United Kingdom, including, in my view, the Prime Minister of this country, who harbour very anti-British views.
They do.
Who don't really care about this country, who want to see us punished for some peculiar historic problems that they've got with the country or some kind of mental issues they've got themselves. I just don't get it.
Well, do you remember when that brilliant Israeli operation to get rid of Hezbollah happened, and they had the pages all blowing up, and they're all standing in supermarkets getting blown up? And it was pointed out to me by somebody actually in Lebanon who has family in Lebanon, who said, isn't it weird that I've come to live in London where Hezbollah are more popular than they are in Lebanon?
Yeah.
You know, because the Lebanese people don't want Hezbollah anywhere near running the country, and they're very happy that Israel has taken them out. But in London, you've got people marching up and down waving banners for Hezbollah.
Absolutely. I mean, Lebanon was a really peaceful country until Hezbollah, until 1978. Hezbollah and the, you know, emergence of extreme Islamism and anti-Israeli sentiment. It was a settled, peaceful, prosperous. Beirut was a first-class city. So they know exactly, you know, how this goes if you let elements like Hezbollah out of control. Hezbollah, I think, have something like 15% of the seats in the Lebanese parliament, but they effectively run the country because they are the threat. They are forceful. They are the belligerent ones. And
they're the guys with the guns, right?
They're the guys with the guns, exactly.
And
it's very sad. It's very
is.
sad.
It really is. And I'm so pleased that Israel's done what it's done. And let's hope that with the emergence of Donald Trump now as the 47th president, you know, they can really start sorting that area out.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, even before taking office, he managed to bring enough pressure to bear to bring peace to the Middle East. And I hope he uses the same kind of pressure in Ukraine. We need peace in Ukraine. The war in Ukraine is not going to end with an outright victory.
No.
We need a negotiated settlement, and Europe needs to understand that. Europe, having been so slow to sanction Russia, some parts of Europe still buying Russian oil, nevertheless banging the drum for an outright, complete 100% victory for Zelensky. And down that road lies massive monetary commitment by the European Union and the United Kingdom in the West, and massive more death. And so I hope Trump delivers on his promise that he's going to bring peace there too. And to his credit, and we must remember this, Last time he was president, he started no wars.
Right.
Now, you might think that's an unremarkable comment for an American president, but actually most American presidents start a war of some sort when they're in office.
They do.
And Trump's not of that disposition. So I hope that can be resolved as well.
Absolutely right. Ben, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Ben Habib, the former Deputy Leader of Reform UK. We're going to talk some more about Donald Trump coming up with Bob McEwen, a former Republican congressman. Trump doesn't like war. Piers Morgan was on BBC yesterday saying exactly that, and he knows Trump better than most people. And he said, no, he thinks it's bad for business, and he thinks foreign places to send American troops are not welcome because American troops and American boys and girls get killed. And that's not good for the country. Let's get a voice note from John.
Morning, Mike. John in Glasgow. You were speaking about the Guardian earlier on. You're on about Donald Trump, how he's a convicted felon. It's amazing how the Guardian and the BBC ignore the crime, the robberies, the rapes, the murders that go on in Britain every day of the week. The victims are never heard of in Britain because they just don't care. But they're going to fall over themselves about a president who's thousands of miles away. These people are hypocritical.
They totally are. Absolute hypocrites. The BBC, The Guardian, all lefty organisations. By the way, I've had a note from somebody called Bridget who says, my coin, Diversity Built Britain, is worth £3.50. Brilliant. I'll toss it up and I'll try and catch it. There you go. 7:35.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
7:37, welcome back to Morning Glory. Somebody else says this, Chris in Wallasey. That coin you're talking about was released when we left officially the European Union by the woke Royal Mint as the coin to commemorate leaving the EU. Really? Is that what it was, 2020? I didn't think... well, I suppose we did leave the EU in January 2020, didn't we? Diversity, it must have done others then. I wonder if anybody can find any of the other slogans. Diversity built Britain. A lot of old cobblers. Anyway, Bob McEwen's here, former Republican congressman from Ohio. Bob, a very good morning to you.
Mike, good morning to you.
Great to see you. We're all in a very good mood today for some reason. I can't imagine why, but even people in Britain who have had the ghastly Keir Starmer in charge since July the 4th have suddenly got a spring in their step because Donald Trump is back. Common sense is back. I'm calling it the year of common sense. He's already had an effect on the Middle East. He's going to have a massive effect in America, and we can't wait, frankly.
Well, yes, exactly. The Middle East as well. China, of course, had been militarizing the Chinese Straits, which is 60 to 70% of all maritime traffic. Under Donald Trump, that was stopped. Of course, you mentioned about Ukraine, you mentioned the Middle East. So to have adults back in charge is a good thing. And interesting about how these things swing across the board. We see in Argentina. I'm optimistic about good conservative leadership in the days ahead in Britain and in France and in the continent as well. So this is just the beginning.
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, unfortunately, I mean, you say you're looking ahead to some good conservative leadership in Britain. We haven't got it at the moment because we're kind of bucking the trend here. We've elected some kind of ridiculous rabble of socialists, you know, God knows why. And of course, Keir Starmer's not at the inauguration, but other world leaders are. Let's have a look at what Donald Trump had to say from last night's rally on illegal immigration.
By the time the sun sets tomorrow evening, the invasion of our borders will have come to a halt, and all the illegal border trespassers will in some form or another be on their way back home.
I mean, that's going to be tough, isn't it, for him, the immigration thing? But, I mean, the American people want that to happen.
Well, we've just had such a lack of leadership, and of course, when you have a lack of leadership, it's not that nothing happens. It means that evil is not dissuaded. And you see the chaos that subsumes. In the United States, the American people, over 78% want to stop to it. Of course, the Democrats couldn't see that coming. And so what happens with these sort of things is they tend to correct themselves. When you have leadership, those that are evil, they no longer want to go out on the streets and create mayhem, and they begin to self-deport. And we see it happening across the board, that they know that this is the law is going to be reapplied. And you see that already they're beginning, not only the numbers down, but they're beginning to return to their country of origin.
Right. And do you share my view, Bob, that I think Donald Trump coming in the second time is actually a very different Donald Trump? He's smarter, he's cleverer, you know, he's more experienced in the ways of governing. You know, there was a bit of kind of, you know, the old arrogant, kind of slightly angry Donald Trump in 2016 when he came in. This time, he seems to be much more calm. He seems much more connected to what he wants to do. And I'm looking forward to what he's going to do.
Well, Mike, this is their worst nightmare. It won't take him 3 years this time to find out how to be president.
Right.
And the thing that he couldn't understood in my conversations with him is that, you know, he gave the first contribution to the majority leader, the Democrat majority leader from New York, and he said that he knew that over time that they could friends and they could work together. Yeah. And he felt that the opposition that he encountered when he ran for office was just short-lived. He thought as soon as he got in, they could begin to do things. He found out that they wanted to destroy him.
Right.
This time, he's not that naive.
Right. And also, they can't do it this time because he's got the majority in both houses, and so he's in a pretty good position, right?
Right, and they know the American people. The main thing is that it's just like many in Europe. They're so far out of touch that they don't even realize they're out of touch.
Right.
And they thought that what they were saying made sense, and it was repulsed by even the base of the people that they claimed to have represented. They overwhelmingly went for Donald Trump, and that left them frustrated. Every single demographic that you can comprehend went for Donald Trump as opposed to the Democrat base.
And they still can't quite understand it, can they? I mean, that's the bit that we don't get here as well. The lefties in this country are all kind of scraping their heads going, how has this happened? You know, but surely everybody knows that he's, you know, a felon, that he's a, you know, misogynist, he's a horrible man. You know, it's all they ever say. And they have no clue about the realities of how it all happened. Let's have a look at Elon Musk. He was at the rally last night.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry, little X just followed me on the stage here. He's a very enthusiastic supporter, as you can see. Woo! Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Elon Musk is going to be interesting as well. What sort of role do you think he's going to actually have as a sort of day-to-day member of Trump's entourage?
Well, one of the real frustrations is that Tulsi Gabbard, for example, she was the #2, the vice chairman of the National Party. She was #2. And then Robert Kennedy, of course, from the Kennedy family. And Elon Musk was a large Democrat contributor his entire life. They began to recognize that there were those in the left, everything they touch, they destroy.
Yeah.
And it's beginning to dawn on people that eventually. So I think his wisdom and his insight of this great dynamic change that's taking place in our economies. He'll play a major part. It's great to not have a politician in a position of leadership, but a person who wants to get things done, make common sense.
Yeah.
And that's the uniqueness. And quite frankly, if I may say so, the foreign minister in Great Britain and these other, quote, diplomats, unquote, they never grasped Donald Trump because he doesn't speak diplomatic. He speaks common sense. And
Exactly.
the American people relate to it.
Exactly right. It's what we do here. We're the home of common sense. It's the year of common sense. Bob, I can't wait for it all to get underway. Thank you very much indeed. We'll talk to you soon. Bob McEwen, former Republican congressman from Ohio. This from Lisa. Finally here, the day Donald Trump becomes the 47th president of the United States of America, a leader who puts his country and its people first, says Lisa in Birmingham. Absolutely right. Could not agree with you more. And it's all going to kick off today. And he says, right there, by sunset tonight, in the United States of America, the immigration problem will start to be addressed. People will be on their way home, deported from the USA because they've arrived there illegally. We could do with a bit of that here, couldn't we? 7:45.
We had Ed Davey, Sadiq Khan, others, the Speaker of the John Bercow, shuttling backwards and forwards to Brussels, basically briefing against the British people, briefing against the democratic will of the British people, trying to undermine Brexit. We've had one hell of an uphill struggle, and the agenda we're all fighting for, and the agenda that President Trump is about to deliver for the US is the same agenda that we're fighting for in Brexit. You know, put America first, put the United Kingdom first.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:48. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until, of course, 10 o'clock. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here then. We've got much to do. It is the big inauguration day today. We've got much to celebrate because Donald Trump is finally going to become the 47th president around about 5 p.m. Live right here. As it happens, it'll be on Jeremy Carl's show, Drive, of course, that kicks off at 4 o'clock. President Trump and the Village People was hilarious, pure trolling, says Tony. And Alan in Merseyside says, thank God we have proper representation at Donald Trump's inauguration. inauguration in Nigel Farage. Well, it's interesting because, of course, Keir Starmer isn't there. Keir Starmer very much on the outside of what's going on. And one of the things that we're hearing, and we read over the weekend that might be happening, is that Donald Trump is going to intervene in this row about the Chagos Islands because, of course, the Attorney General is now in a row about that here in the UK. Lord Hermer has been urged to come clean over the government's U-turn that lets refugees come to the UK months after his appointment. He's already in trouble because of his associations with Gerry Adams, the leader of the Sinn Féin organisation, because of his likelihood of being able to get some kind of compensation out of the British government, i.e. the British taxpayer, thanks to a change of plan from the Labour government. But of course, we've seen Keir Starmer and David Lammy trying to shove through the Chagos Islands deal to basically give it away to Mauritius for not only no money, but with money that we have to then pay them to the tune of about 9 billion quid. Vanessa Callow is here. She's the Chagosian lead at the Friends of the British Overseas Territories. We've spoken to Vanessa many times before. Vanessa, very good morning to you. Welcome back.
Good morning.
You must be pleased that Donald Trump is in today, because it looks like he is going to put his foot down and say to Keir Starmer, you're not doing it.
Yes, good morning, everyone. And the thing is, we are really happy that we managed to have that opportunity now that the President Donald Trump is on power now, and we congratulate him. Thank you for advocate us as well as Chagos, because it was really challenging as the Prime Minister and Lammy want to do the deal as soon as possible, and it was really, really upsetting for us.
Yes, exactly right. And it's been going backwards and forwards, hasn't it? Because at first it looked as though they were trying to rush it through before the Mauritian government changed, and then the Mauritian government changed, and then we thought, well, they don't really want the island, so that's going to go away. And then suddenly, you know, they sent Jonathan Powell down there. Suddenly there was more negotiations, and then suddenly the government of Mauritius did want it. And they also wanted a load of money as well.
Yes, so as at the moment, so the government is not listening. So there's, as a British Chagos, we are deeply concerned about recent UK asylum decisions favouring Sri Lanka refugees from the Chagos Island. This highlights our feeling of being overlooked and, you know, undervalued as a British citizen in UK. The Chagos deserve to be heard and should be allowed to return to the Chagos Island as British. We always mandate this. The Mauritian government is lying. Chagos Island never belonged to Mauritius, right. And we will need self-determination. And with Donald Trump on power, so we are behind him to kill that deal, right. And stop the Prime Minister and Lammy to give away our island, a British overseas territory island.
Yeah, absolutely right. I couldn't agree with you more. What would happen if it was sold or given away to Mauritius? Do you think the people living there would leave?
The people is not agree with this. They are fleeing Mauritius at the moment. Tomorrow there will be families coming in Heathrow Airport, and with their British passport. We are not eligible to go back to Chagos Island. That's why we are fleeing to come to relocate in UK. We just want the Prime Minister to do the right decision and keep our island as British, and then let the Chagos to go as a plan to go to the island, and then we work together. So I don't understand why he wants to take the taxpayer to give to a foreign country that this island is never belonged to Mauritius, right. And they have like an advisory decision from the International Court of Justice. That's why it's related to all this situation.
Yeah, absolutely right. And so, I mean, how hopeful are you that this decision by Donald Trump will be something he does? He's going to do a lot of things today and tomorrow as a first kind of, you know, introduction to his new job. Are you hopeful that that somebody in the White House will make this decision quickly?
We are all hopeful because Donald Trump, he's listening to his people, and I would like to him listening to the Chagos and most of the British public, because they don't want this island to go to another foreign country, and the taxpayer is belong to the Mauritian public.
Right. And have you spoken to anyone in the British government? Has anybody from the British government spoken to you?
At the moment, we didn't be consulted by the government, and just Foreign Office, one of the officials, we talked briefly about the UK support, and is still not helping the Chagos. And there's just one thing I don't understand, because as the Attorney General Law Hermit, who was supporting these asylum seekers from Sri Lanka, has been the government grant them a special deal, raising question about fairness and conflict of interest, similar to the Prime Minister Starmer. Yes, with Philip's son, a barrister for Mauritius. So we think there's a conflict of interest between those individuals. Right. So we are not happy, like the Sri Lanka from Chagos, they put them in West Sussex with the local government council called Crawley, together with the Chagosian who just relocated to UK. You can see the different treatment. They are well treated than the Chagosian who are British. Yeah. And they are not worried. They have everything they want. And I can hear yesterday when I read the Telegraph, they even have compensation that a British citizen, Chagosian, who lost their country and be miserably living in Mauritius, sends the compensation that the UK gave to Mauritius, that the Chagosian didn't have, and we still in that situation. We still suffering. Yes. And this is what we want: a fair recognition of the Chagosian, and to stay British and go back to our island as British. And we hope that that will happen soon. Yeah, with Donald Trump with us, yes.
Well, we hope it happens as well, Vanessa. Thank you very much indeed for talking to us. Vanessa Kalu, Chagosian lead there from Friends of the British Overseas Territories. Yeah, this business with Lord Hermer, which has put him back in the firing line again over a conflict of interest, because we already heard about the problem with Gerry Adams. This was when he represented 5 Sri Lankan refugees who came to Britain via the Chagos Islands. And as she says, are now being put up here, even though the actual asylum claim supposedly failed. But the worry is that he was obviously operating as a private lawyer, and he was working for some of these charities, presumably, which were representing asylum seekers from Sri Lanka who were using the Chagos Islands as a way to cut through into Britain. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. Morning, Mike, says Jay from Coventry. Viva la Trump. It's plainly obvious that if you're not lousy left in their eyes, you have to be far right. You just can't be human with common sense. Let's hope we get infected with Trumpism. Well, let's hope so. Have a look at this.
Tomorrow at noon, the curtain closes on 4 long years of American decline, and we begin a brand new day of American strength and prosperity, dignity and pride. Bringing it all back. Once and for all, we're going to end the reign of a failed and corrupt political establishment in Washington, a failed administration. We're not going to take it anymore. We're going to stop the invasion of our borders. We're going to reclaim our wealth. We're going to unlock the liquid gold that's right under our feet, liquid gold. We're going to bring back law and order to our cities. We're going to restore patriotism to our schools, get radical left, woke ideologies the hell out of our military and out of our government. And we are going to make America great again.
I mean, you've got to love him. He's back, ladies and gentlemen. Donald Trump, Mark II. And this will be better than the first time around, I can tell you that. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Let's get a voice note from Andy.
Good morning, Mike. Andy in Lowton. Absolute great show, as normal. Listen to you every morning and everybody else on Talk. Absolutely brilliant. That interview then with Ben Habib, both of you absolutely spot on. Great day today. Donald Trump back in. Well done, Mike. Keep going, mate. Bye.
No problem at all. Listen, Andy, thank you very much indeed. There's an awful lot of people very, very happy this morning, getting some amazing messages coming in from all parts of the country. Neil says this morning, Mike, yes, it's a great day, finally, and a live president at the helm. Don't forget the important court cases that start today. Yeah, we mentioned that a little bit earlier on. We'll keep you abreast of all of that. Coming up, we're going to go back to Israel, find out what's going on there. This is Talk. I'm Mike Graham.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 2 minutes past 8. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until, of course, 10 o'clock. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be along then. Harry Cole joins us this hour. He's got a column in The Sun, of course, today, Sun's political editor. He says, whisper it, Trump might actually do a good job. He will do a good job, and I think everybody who's giving us messages today about it are absolutely certain that not only will Trump make America great again, but he will make the world a safer place, he will make the world a better place, he will make it less woke, and he will genuinely kickstart the American economy. That's already started happening. We've already seen movement in the Middle East. Not everybody's absolutely delighted with the deal that's been struck with Hamas, but at least 3 young women were released yesterday. We're going to be talking about that right now. Emily Damari was reunited reunited with her mother. Also, Israelis Doron Steinbrecher, 31 years old, and Romy Gonen, 24. Three women who have been held for 471 days beneath those horrible dark tunnels inside Gaza City at the hands of these men that you can see now. So brave they are that they cover their faces and wear their little teenage mutant Ninja Turtle bandanas. You know, they look ridiculous, but they're not ridiculous. They're dangerous, they're carrying guns, they're threatening people. They are the lowest of the low. They are terrorists, even though the BBC doesn't like to call them that. 0344 499 1000. Coming up later on today, of course, it is Inauguration Day, January the 20th, inside the Capitol building. He's back.
Da, 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 da. What a great day. Baked cake yesterday, got some champagne in.
What a great day. Trump's going to be in power, and I hope his first executive order is to send the Prince of Darkness packing.
Roger says this, Mike, the best thing about today is that the lefties and the woke brigade will hate the Trump inauguration. They certainly will. You'll hear it all here, and you can watch it all here right this afternoon on the Jeremy Kyle Show around about 5 o'clock. Coming up, we'll also talk about Keir Starmer and the state of his cabinet. He's not in Washington, D.C., of course, one of the world leaders who didn't get invited, snubbed by the Trump administration. He's got massive problems in his own cabinet. He's got two, count them, situations going on where there's been a breach of ethics. Angela Rayner is under investigation, as is very possibly the Attorney General. You've got Sadiq Khan also under investigation for getting freebies from the Taylor Swift tour. Also, Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell, the former stalwarts of the left-wing part of the Labour Party, they're going to be seeing the police later on for their part in a demonstration, pro-Palestinian demonstration, on Saturday, where they refused to obey the police orders to stay away from a synagogue. Absolutely unbelievable stuff. 0344 499 1000 is the number. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Coming up, we'll also talk about smartwatches, because apparently having a smartwatch might actually make you more anxious as you try and count everything that you're doing and see whether it's actually making you healthier. Also, we'll be talking about record numbers of people going for private healthcare because they simply cannot afford to wait any longer to get themselves fixed up on the NHS, which is failing miserably. Let's get a voice note from Brian.
Morning, Mike. Brian from Southend. Just a couple of things on this hostage release thing. You know, whilst it's great that 3 hostages have been released, but why has it been agreed that 30 Palestinian or 90 Palestinian hostages have been released for just 3? And why couldn't they release them all together? You know, and one of these is a British girl, I understand, that was held hostage. Why haven't we done anything about it?
Well, I'll tell you why we haven't done anything about it, because David Lammy and Keir Starmer don't really seem to know what to do about the Middle East. I mean, David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, is a man who called for the arrest of Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, if he ever came to Britain. Thanks to that ridiculous charge from the International Criminal Court. I'll tell you what, we need to talk to a man that will be able to possibly answer all of those questions. Jonathan Korrikas, former IDF spokesman. Jonathan, very good morning to you. It's a big day, obviously, today in America, but it's also a massive day in Israel. The 3 young women were released yesterday, thank God, after 471 days underground. I mean, it does seem a bit lopsided, doesn't it, that Israel has agreed once again to let so many Palestinian prisoners out. Can you tell us how that deal kind of came about?
Good morning. I share your sentiment, and I share the sentiment of the voice note that was sent, that it is kind of lopsided. Obviously, not the best of negotiators we are, but we care very deeply for our hostages and getting them back home. You know, if this deal, if only what meets the eye is this deal, then it is a very bad deal for Israel. Why? Because it will leave Hamas in power. It will release about 2,000 Palestinian terrorists, Israeli prisons, some of them very heavy convicted felons with multiple life sentences for murdering many Israelis. And it will essentially extend the conflict. But that is what meets the eye. I hope that my prime minister didn't sign on to a deal that doesn't have future agreements between the US and Israel about the Islamic Republic of Iran or the future of fighting against Hamas in Gaza, and perhaps positive things about normalizing ties with Saudi Arabia. I hope that that's part of the deal, because otherwise this is not a good deal, and what it means is that there will be continued suffering, because as long as Hamas stays in power, we will unfortunately be relegated to a state of warfare and fighting. Because Hamas's goal, and they have, by the way, reaffirmed this goal just 2 days ago. Khalil al-Haya, a leading political figure in Hamas, is on record saying that this is just a beginning. We intend to continue our jihad against the Jews until all of the occupation is gone. Now, he's not talking about Gaza. He's talking about Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Haifa, Beersheba, Ashdod, all of it. That is what he calls the occupation, what you and I call the state of Israel. So mixed emotions, very happy to see Israeli women home. And this is going to be a challenging 42 days ahead.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, supposedly more hostages released on Saturday, as far as we understand it, but still no word from Hamas as to which ones of those might still be alive or which ones might have died or been killed.
No, that's correct, Graham. And the only agreement that Hamas and Israel has is that the live hostages will be released before the dead ones. And we know that out of the 33 that have been agreed upon to be released, by the way, there will be 64 Israeli hostages remaining in Hamas captivity, all of them men, at the end of this ceasefire deal. And that is supposed to be negotiated on the 16th day. That is when Israel and Hamas are supposed to convene again and negotiate about the future, whether to continue the deal after 42 days or to not to continue. And what I'm concerned about is that we're still talking about more than 60 Israeli hostages, some of them also dual nationals. And Hamas, you know, they are masters at psychological warfare and terrorism. They will milk every ounce of psychological terror that they can get out of this. I can already see that they have implemented lessons from the first hostage release deal, and they're doing things differently. They have these ridiculous diplomas that they're sending the hostages with. They're giving them a goodie bag with Hamas insignia on, which I think is beyond absurd. And what I think is really appalling is, you know, seeing the images of Red Cross vehicles with Hamas gunmen standing on top of them as if they were standing on top of Hamas vehicles. Absolutely crazy seeing that. These vehicles are supposed to be clear of Hamas operatives. So we won't know who is alive and dead. The moment that we will see dead hostages coming out, then we know that the rest are unfortunately dead as well.
Right. And we shouldn't forget, I suppose, Jonathan, that one of the masterminds of the October 7th massacre, an invasion of Israel and hostage-taking, was actually a former prisoner who had been released in one of these deals, who then was released and then plotted to attack Israel. So, I mean, there must be some concerns about that and who's coming out.
Many, Graham, you are 100% correct. Yahya Sinwar, the late leader of Hamas and the person who was behind the October 7 attack. It's his brainchild, his idea, his stance on jihad against Israel is what drew or forced Hamas into this direction. Yes, he was released together with approximately 1,000 other prisoners about almost 20 years ago, when Israel paid more than 1,000 prisoners for one live Israeli soldier, Gilad Shalit, and that was a long time ago. And what that spurred was, you are correct, a wave of violence. And that is why many Israelis today, not only, and that's obvious, families of victims that are appalled, frustrated, beyond themselves with seeing the murderers of their loved ones out in the streets and received back home as heroes by the Palestinian society in great anticipation. Not only them, but everybody else, because we know from history that when we release lots of Palestinian terrorists, what they usually do is go back to violence, and we will find ourselves fighting them. And I just hope that the IDF and Israeli Security Agency and Mossad will keep close tabs on these people, the most serious ones, to make sure that whenever they crossed the line that they're not supposed to be crossing, justice will be swift and that they won't be making it back to prisons, but it'll be a one-way trip to a different destination.
Yeah, let's hope so. We wish you well. Jonathan, thank you very much indeed. Jonathan Conricus there, former IDF spokesperson. Obviously, the deal isn't ideal, as you might say, but more importantly for the Israelis to get those hostages back, if they're still alive, is the most important part of any conversation. And so I don't think you can really expect the Palestinian terrorists to behave as you would like them to behave in civilised manners. You would expect them to behave in an uncivilised manner. 14 minutes past 8. Let's talk to Susan Hall, London Assembly member, of course, former Conservative London mayoral candidate. A couple of stories about Sadiq Khan this morning. Susan, very good morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Good morning.
I mean, hard to believe that Sadiq Khan, I won't refer to him as with his title that he now has, that he was given in the New Year's Honours List, because I don't think he deserves it. First of all, we find out that he got free tickets worth £3,000 to Taylor Swift concerts when she was here at Wembley Stadium in London. He didn't declare them initially, and when he did declare them, he then declared them as football tickets, and then when he did that, he under-declared them and said that they were worth less money than they actually were. What is it about Labour politicians and their need to go and see Taylor Swift for free?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what it is about them that thinks they should have everything for free. I mean, look at the government. You know, it's just freebie gate, isn't it? With them? They're dreadful. Absolutely dreadful.
Incredible. So, I mean, that's the first story. Then there's the second story, which sort of broke yesterday because he gave an interview to The Observer in which he regarded the incoming President Trump as a fascist. It talks about the far right taking over the Western world and how we have to fight back against it. I mean, even his own party now have slapped him down for saying that.
Well, I'm glad they have slapped him down. I mean, he has been against President Trump going all the way back. He's been rude about him. He's dismissive. And as with so many Labour politicians, if there's anybody from the right, and I mean just right of centre, they call us hard right or right in a way to try and prove us as racist, because that's what they do. And that way they think they'll get us out. And unfortunately, that's worked in London. But I think people are getting fed up with that now. We're sick to death of it. We're not far right. The minute I was selected to stand against him, all the press were told that I was hard right.
Yeah.
I mean, for goodness sake, what nonsense.
I know. It is totally ridiculous. I mean, this is quite an extraordinary situation over the Taylor Swift tickets. Because if you remember, and I know you're quite heavily involved in this you know, questioning of Sadiq Khan, because he doesn't like answering questions, does he? I mean, I saw a clip from him last week where he said that he would never encourage anyone to work with reform, which seemed to me the most ludicrously undemocratic thing even he has ever said. But we remember that not only did he get these freebie tickets, but Taylor Swift got that blue light, you know, fast convoy scenario when she'd left Wembley Stadium after her shows. She would have a fast car and an entourage chasing all the way through with a police escort all the way back to a hotel in the centre of town. Now, one might ask the question, are these two things related?
Well, I've never been able to get to the bottom of that. I was the one that put in the questions about the tickets to Taylor Swift. But privately, I've spoken to police officers that have dealt with these escort police before, and they've said that there's no way that they would normally do it. Now, whether it was the Home Secretary, whether it was Sadiq Khan, or whether they didn't have anything to do with it at all, I do not know. You just can't get to the bottom of it.
Yeah. And LS Events, who are the people that provided the tickets, are, I think, from the last time I read about this story, a company that's involved in quite a lot of outdoor events that are done for the City of London and for the Mayor's office. So there's an obvious conflict of interest here where he's receiving freebies from a company that gets business out of the City of London Mayor's office.
Yes, that's right. But as I say, all the way through the summer, we've seen all the freebies they're all getting. Today we see that Angela Rayner has been getting her staff to do all her moving. They're not supposed to do that either. Right. I mean, it's all gone to their head, and they just do what they like with taxpayers' money, which is unacceptable. Yeah, it totally is. There's now also another inquiry being called for, which is into the Attorney General, and this is Robert Jenrick, you know, who basically has found out that not only has he got a conflict of interest when it comes to Gerry Adams, but he also may now have a conflict of interest when it comes to the Chagos Islands. It just reeks, doesn't it, quite frankly? It's all these Labour politicians. I mean, so many of them embroiled in things that, you know, wouldn't pass the sniff test, as it were.
No, it really wouldn't. It is extraordinary, isn't it, how Sadiq Khan manages to remain not only in office, but in such kind of arrogance in office, where he won't answer. I mean, you've had it many times, and we've played out many clips of yours asking him questions which he refuses to answer. I mean, you know, it was only last week, I think, that you were asking him about the grooming gangs situation, which he was deliberately obfuscating and deliberately trying to goad you into using, I presume, the word either Pakistani or Muslim or Asian, so that he could then accuse you of being a racist.
Yes, and I specifically just asked about grooming gangs because I do not know if we've got any in London. I can't imagine that we haven't. But he's the Police and Crime Commissioner, so he should know, and he should be able to tell us how many. Yeah. And I wasn't going to complicate it by referring to any of the people that might be behind this, because, as you're quite right, he would have then gone on to a different tangent. And in any event, I don't know. I don't know if there are any. I don't know who the perpetrators would be. And I just wanted a simple answer. Right. And it was Mayor's question time. He is obliged to answer us. But you know how much he hates me, Mike. You've seen it over the years. Yeah. How many times have we had this conversation?
I know.
He will not answer me, but he's duty bound to.
Of course he is.
You know,
I know. It's not, you know, the private fiefdom of Sadiq Khan. It's the London Mayor's office, paid for by the public purse, paid for by the taxpayers, and he needs to do better. Well, let's keep up the pressure, Susan. We'll get him out eventually, hopefully. We'll see you soon. Thank you very much. Susan Hall, former mayor candidate for the Conservative Party and still a London Assembly member as well. Sadiq Khan, what on earth does he get away with all of this stuff for? How is that possible? Now, coming up, Harry Cole's going to join us. He's the Sun's political editor. He's got a big column in the paper today, as he does every Monday. And the headline on it says today, you know what? Trump might just do a good job, because he probably will. And there's no reason not to think that. Whisper it, he says. Let's have a listen to what some of you are saying about Donald Trump this morning.
Morning, Mike. Great day for America. I've got a brilliant leader in there now. The energy, the passion, the determination from Mr. Trump's great to watch.
Hi, Mike. This is Michael from Norwich. God, today, Donald Trump Day. This feels better than Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, or any day that's been for a long, long time in this country, this hellhole we live in.
Morning, Mike. Great show. Happy Trump Day, my friend. Happy Trump Day.
I mean, lots of people are more excited about this than they ever were at the last election in this country, for heaven's sake. It's Inauguration Day. It's a big day. It's all kicking off. You'll hear it live right here around about 5 o'clock on Jeremy Carl's show later on this afternoon. Coming up next, though, Harry Cole from The Sun.
far as I'm aware, the well was poisoned in many respects in the negotiations that Theresa May did. I think she set up hurdles, or her team set up hurdles, which then made it very difficult for the United Kingdom to get what it wanted. The passport checks being perhaps one of them, but the most notable one, of course, was taking the bended knee to the notion, conceding that point that gave the EU the upper hand in negotiations over Northern Ireland, and therefore the entire United Kingdom.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 8:24. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Has one from Leslie. Mike, how I envy America. Instead of the woke, weak, mealy-mouthed lefty we have masquerading as our leader. And I think that's why so many people are very, very excited about Donald Trump's inauguration today. He becomes the 47th president at 5 o'clock this afternoon. Harry Cole, political editor at The Sun, of course, will be watching, as will all of you. We'll be bringing it live right here on Jeremy Carl's show from Drive at 4 o'clock. Home at last is what it says on the front page of The Sun this morning. After 471 days of Gaza hell, British hostage Emily Damari was able to hug her mother Mandy, thankfully, after getting released by Hamas. And you'd have to say, probably due to the hard work of Donald Trump and his team behind the scenes in the Middle East. Harry, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Good to see you. A big day. Our viewers have never been this excited about any Conservative leader. They've certainly never been this excited about any Labour leader. But they're absolutely over the moon. Your column today, I think, says it all. Whisper it. Trump may do a good job. I think he will.
Well, frankly, we just don't know at the moment. But what one way or the other, all the signs are there that this is a sort of slightly different Donald Trump than the previous incarnation. He's not as insecure, I don't think, as he was in his first term, when there was always questions over whether he had legitimately won the presidency. He had to bat those away for the majority of his first term, whereas actually his win in November was pretty comprehensive. It's the protests are pretty muted, but what we are left with is this sort of hysteria. I'm not talking about your show or your listeners, or indeed Talk, but you don't have to go very far elsewhere into the British media to see the same mistakes being made again. You've got this sort of notion that people have just decided, because they don't like him, it's going to be a disaster. Right. There's no upsides. Yes, he's brash. Yes, he's rude. No, he doesn't play by the rules. And when will you ever see a president dancing with the village people as he was last night? But this instant assumption that the history books have already been decided that, he's going to sell out Ukraine, he's going to make the Middle East more dangerous, he's going to take us into war with China, he's going to drive the US economy off a cliff, he's all this stuff that that the evidence doesn't bear out that it's actually going to happen. Right. And I think, look, it's in Britain's interest for our closest ally to succeed. And yet, the sort of sneering and whining and people like Ed Davey jumping on the bandwagon, already putting out statements saying how dire everything is.
And how dangerous he's going to be and all this, right?
Dangerous day for the world and all this gibberish. And I just think, I'm probably more wishful thinking, but I've just sort of thought, sitting there yesterday, I was writing that, I was like, can everyone just calm down? And let's just see what happens. Let's see how it goes.
Well, exactly right. I mean, yesterday I watched Laura Kuenssberg with sort of further disbelief than normal, because she was actually being quite sensible up until yesterday for a while. But she had this terrible habit of every time she said Hamas, she kept saying a prescribed organisation in many countries, some including Britain. But then she got stuck into Donald Trump. Have a look at her talking here to Greg Swenson from Republicans Overseas.
Not all of your fellow Americans feel that optimism, though. For some people, he's a divisive character. He's a danger to democracy in some people's view. Even some people who worked for him first time round have said he's like a fascist. Is he going to try to reach out, do you think, in the next couple of days, or does he not care about offending others?
And that's kind of what she had to say to Greg Swenson, almost as though, you know, it's very important to focus on a small group of people demonstrating outside the White House, despite the fact that, you know, millions of people actually voted for the guy.
Yeah, millions of people voted for the guy. I would say the sort of protests this time round are significantly more muted. You know, I think even on the more sensible parts of the political left, there is an acceptance that, look, this guy did win, and he absolutely you know, won fair and square. The other thing to note about Donald Trump sort of 2.0 is this is the last time he can't stand for election again. You know, he's got basically 18 months, 2 years to go hell for leather in doing everything without having to worry about being re-elected, without having to worry about that next election on the horizon. And because of that, also, it means that, you know, you sort of become a bit of a lame duck towards the end of your last term when you're not going to be re-elected, and the focus will move on to who's the successor, who's the chosen one, who will kind of keep the MAGA torch alive. So actually, I think what we're going to see is a sort of definitely a front-loaded presidency from Donald Trump. He will do a lot of things very quickly. Fox were reporting this morning that he's going to sign up more than 200 executive president orders today. Yeah. And he was saying, you know, some people were telling him to just go a bit slower and trickle it out over a few months. But he's saying, no, we're going to do all these things. And things that, you know, are slightly relevant to politics in this country. What he's going to be doing, he's going to be massively, you know, sort of green-lighting further drilling for oil, which is obviously a toxic subject in the United Kingdom. We're sitting on massive oil reserves in the North Sea, which we're just no longer going to use for political reasons. He's rolling back electric vehicle mandates. You know, these are the rules that are going to come in the UK as well, that will you know, basically force us to buy electric cars by the middle of the next decade, even though the infrastructure and the car companies are all saying that's mad, we can't do that, and it needs to go slower. He's going to be withdrawing the United States once again from the Paris Climate Accords. This is the sort of net zero guiding sort of lights that, you know, we've all signed up for. But actually, you know, the American economy was already going pretty well, you know, far better than the British and European economies, and it looks like he's going to be doing some stuff that's going to seriously stimulate the US economy by rolling back that green agenda, which is obviously a topic of discussion we have in this country, but no one has really any confidence that, you know, under this government, we're not going to be doing anything going further and faster and more painfully towards net zero.
No, for sure. And he's also going to get rid of all the sort of DEI stuff as well. Let's have a look at what he had to say about this last night.
God spared my... Oh, you're going to have a lot of fun watching television tomorrow. Somebody said yesterday, sir, don't sign so many in one day. Let's do it over a period of weeks. I said, like hell, we're going to do it over weeks. We're going to sign them at the beginning.
I mean, he's already just galvanising, isn't he? After 4 years of Biden, who would, you know, put a glass eye to sleep, and all the gaffes and mistakes that he made, and all of the... You know, it's interesting that the left, who take great care to criticise Trump and talk about him being dangerous, they've got nothing to say about a president who was basically being propped up by what looks like a load of lies coming from the Democrats inside the White House, even from his own family, telling us all that he was fine, when he clearly wasn't fine.
I mean, I've written about this at length, and I remember it was the British press, we were the sort of first ones to go, hang on, being at the G7 summit last year and you know, reporting that, you know, Biden was clearly gaga, and the White House going berserk about it. And they lied. They lied and lied and lied, and they carried on lying until they couldn't lie anymore. And that should go down in history as one of the biggest presidential cover-ups since Watergate, but it won't, because they're nice and fluffy, and the Democrats, and it's fine when they do it because they're not evil right-wingers. And anyway, I could rant about that all day long, but you're right about the DEI stuff as well. Look, he isn't even in the White House yet, and already sort of corporate America has seen the way the world is going. You know, maybe one day we'll be able to buy a pair of trainers or a car or a burger without being sort of virtue signaled by brands. But people like Walmart and Ford have already sort of announced they're scrapping their DEI programs. McDonald's, you can't get more American than McDonald's, sort of rowing back on all of these policies they put in to try and sort of score points with the left. And actually, like, look at Facebook. You know, like, you can't get more totemic. The website, you know, Nick Clegg mysteriously disappearing from Facebook, and then a day or two later, Mark Zuckerberg, you know, announcing they're going to reform all of their censorship programs that basically, essentially, kept, you know, targeted the right and right-wing news, and you know, Donald Trump himself was banned from Facebook at one point. A complete turnaround. You can't get any bigger than that. But you know, it wasn't just companies that sort of signed up to this sort of global woke movement, trying to be right on. It was actually, you know, government departments, both here and in the United States. The FBI have already said they're ditching their DEI programs, and I think they were ahead of the curve, because the president's going to, you know, sign this afternoon, I suspect, a ban on all that sort of woke number jumbo being in the workplace, because people have been saying, look, why do the FBI, why does the Secret Service need a DEI program when their job is to protect and serve? And I think that will have a knock-on effect around the world. It's all, you know, some of the biggest companies in the world are already sort of shifting away from that. It might take some time, but it will ease back. It will sort of ease back the sort of the march towards the stuff in this country as well, I suspect.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
The other thing that made me laugh this morning was they were talking about how they're going to basically, essentially, rid. One of the biggest mistakes they made in 2016 was not having enough political appointees and relying on sort of Obama people to stay in some key political positions. It's a little bit different in America. They actually, the top sort of 3,000 jobs of the civil service are sort of appointed by the new administration each time. But so they will be doing that properly. And one of the Trump team briefing one of the papers said the easiest and quickest way we're going to get our people in and their people out is make them come back and work from the office 5 days a week, and they won't like that. So they'll probably go their own bat anyway.
They absolutely won't. And just finally, where does this all leave Keir Starmer? Because he's got another bad week looming. He's got you know, Angela Rayner being looked into for a possible ethics breach. Sadiq Khan, I know he doesn't technically work for him. He's also getting questions about his tickets. The Attorney General still under fire. There's now Robert Jenrick has asked for an inquiry into him. Meanwhile, he's got Rachel Reeves over in Davos. He's sitting here in London, not in Washington, D.C. Presumably he's just going to watch the inauguration on the telly, is he?
Well, traditionally, Prime Ministers don't go. He's obviously sending Karen Pierce, our ambassador, to represent the British government. But it is a bit embarrassing that you're going to have Nigel Farage, Suella Braverman, Boris Johnson, Priti Patel, you know, scores of...
Giorgia Meloni,
other leaders haven't been invited. So there is a precedent has been broken. Look, I suspect we'll see him in Washington pretty soon. It's normally sort of tradition that the Brits, you know, go out there, and I don't know whether he'll be first but he'll be out there pretty fast, I suspect. Look, I'm told they insist that the relationship between Trump and Starmer and themselves is, you know, is good, it's warm. You know, they've had a good chat, but it's clear the teams are a little bit suspicious of each other, and it hasn't been going that well. And there's a big choice to make for Starmer in the coming months and years. He's very clear that he wants a US trade deal. He wants to reopen talks that were paused by Joe Biden, that Trump and Boris had started, to get that free trade deal, which would be, you know, the sort of jewel in the sort of Brexit crown, I suspect. But at the same time, he's renegotiating his position with Brexit. That's all going to come to a head with the European Union in the coming months. And look, they're not going to suddenly soften their stance towards Brexit and offer some better deal simply because they're Labour rather than being those, you know, once again those ghastly Tories. The sort of expectation that it will be fine because they all, you know, they're a bit more similar, so therefore they'll get a better deal. It's nonsense. At some point, the EU is going to demand a price for softening checks. That price is going to be closer alignment on EU rules and red tape and on new laws and how that will be overseen by the courts, and that is going to rub Donald Trump up the wrong way. So Keir Starmer says he doesn't have to choose between the US and a closer tie to the European Union. I think he does, and that choice is going to have to come soon. And that's where, you know, for all the nice words and handshakes and patting each other on the back, that's where the real politics comes into it. You know, who are we going to lash ourselves to? Donald Trump's America going gangbusters on the economy, or a sickly European Union, you know, sort of struggling to contain the popular will that doesn't like it very much.
No, quite. Very interesting stuff. Harry, it's going to be a very interesting day. Read your column in The Sun today, page 10, every single Monday. Harry Cole, political editor of The Sun. Thank you very much indeed. The headline says, whisper it, Trump may do a good job. You know, you can always regard you can reply to Harry Cole, of course, on his column in The Sun, anywhere you like on The Sun's website. We've got much more to do, of course. We're going to talk about grooming gangs coming up. We're going to talk about Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell, who are going to have to face the police and an inquiry as to what they were doing on a pro-Palestine march, pushing their way through to an area where they weren't supposed to go because there was a synagogue there. You do wonder what these people are thinking, don't you? It's 8:38. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:41. Got this from Catherine Porter on Twitter. You might remember we had her on talking about this terrible state of the net zero bound Ed Miliband's national grid. She says the next 3 days are looking tight for the GB power grid. Wind output on Wednesday expected to be 500 megawatts. Yes, virtually zero. We will be relying on gas, nuclear and imports to meet demand. Again, we'll talk about that a little bit more tomorrow. Let's right now, though, talk to Georgina Halford-Hall. She's the CEO of Whistleblowers UK. They've got something to say about grooming gangs, as senior police officers failed to protect girls from grooming gangs in Rotherham because apparently they prioritise other crimes to hit Home Office targets. This is a leaked report which has come out from the Independent Office for Police Conduct. Georgina, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Thank you very much for inviting me onto the programme.
Not at all. I must confess, when I read this story about the report, the South Yorkshire Police apparently were focusing on vehicle burglary and robbery crimes. That's news to me. I didn't think the police were focused on anything like that, because they've got such a bad record at actually solving crimes, haven't they?
Well, exactly. You know, we could go down the line of, policing people's Twitter and so on and prioritising that. But let's really think about what needs to change here. I'm going to start with talking about the Office of the Whistleblower. My organisation's been campaigning for this on exactly this reason, so that people who don't get satisfaction from the police, where police seem to marginalise them or just send them into endless complaints procedures rather than investigating the concerns, we're looking to ask the government to bring in something that protects the whistleblowers, protects the children, investigates the wrongdoing, and holds them to those responsible to account. What is so difficult about that? But yeah, talking about targets, you're quite right. Key performance indicators, child sexual exploitation and child abuse, not a priority. Well, in everybody else's book, it's a priority, and it's certainly a priority in ours. And organisations like mine shouldn't even need to exist, because if the police, the regulators, dare I say the politicians, were all doing their job, these children would be protected.
Well, I mean, having read so many of the reports, as I'm sure you have, over recent days and weeks, since Elon Musk kind of brought this whole thing back up to the fore of public opinion again, I mean, it beggars belief, really, that so little was done to help these poor children, because that's what they were. They were children being absolutely and utterly abused, being killed in some cases, being injured beyond repair. It's just incredible that all of these people can turn around and just go, oh, well, you know, lessons must be learned and we didn't really do as much as we should have done. I mean, it's pathetic, isn't it?
It's more than pathetic, Mike. This is criminal behaviour by these people who are determined to bury all of this and bury their responsibility for it. Because this is not just... You know, there's been lots of stuff about white girls. Yes, a lot of them were white girls, but it was all children. And I wrote to the Prime Minister on the 16th of November 2020 about these concerns and about the way that Jane Senior, my Director of Safeguarding, was being treated by her colleagues, Labour councillors at Rotherham Metropolitan Borough Council, who were freezing her out because she would not shut up. The rest of them all want to say, you know, nothing to see here. There's been the report by Alexis J and so on, but actually nothing has been done. And I'm still waiting to hear from the Prime Minister for his reasons for why he hasn't personally taken responsibility for this to ensure that every child in this country is safe.
Yes. Well, he's stubborn, isn't he? He doesn't like changing his mind when he doesn't want to change his mind. And he's been told, apparently, by his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, that he has to do something, which is why Yvette Cooper finally said that there's going to be at least a few local inquiries. But that's not really good enough, is it?
No, it's absolutely not. It's not good enough at all. First of all, they need to immediately implement Alexis J's recommendations, but they need to go much further than that. There needs to be some common sense. This has been a political football for too long, virtue signalling in pockets. Let's face it, all of the MPs are terrified. They want to, you know, they're frightened to speak up unless the rest of them are with them. And when they do speak up on their own, they're sent to the back benches. This is just absolutely the playbook of how whistleblowers are treated across our society. And it's just not sufficient. Whistleblowing is not an employment issue. It's often a criminal issue, as we've seen in this particular case. And we need to have some common sense, don't we? You have brilliant police officers, Maggie Oliver, Pete Jackson, and so many others I could name, who've all raised concerns within their job and then been sent to Coventry, but worse. Pete Jackson's been subjected to years of an employment tribunal. Well, still nobody's looked at the fact that he was whistleblowing about grooming gang members taking children into houses where children were being abused. What is wrong with our society? Or what is wrong with... It's not society, because the public, and I'm a member of the public, all want to see change.
Absolutely right.
It's
Georgina,
listen,
great to talk to you. We must get you back on because we didn't have a lot of time this morning. We'll talk to you some more. Georgina Halford-Hall, their CEO of Whistleblowers UK, on yet another report about the police and why they failed in South Yorkshire on grooming gangs. Let's talk now, though, to Richard Holden, MP, Shadow Paymaster General. He's down, I think, in Westminster for us. Richard, very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Mike. Nice to hear you.
Yeah, good to see you. Big week this coming up, obviously. Donald Trump's inauguration today. Fascinating what's going on in America with the way that he's kind of dismantling the wokery that's been gripping that country for the last 4 years under Joe Biden. A lot of our listeners and viewers this morning, Richard, very, very galvanised by Donald Trump and by him coming in and hoping that it's going to have some kind of knock-on effect on this country.
Yes, well, look, I think there's actually a real opportunity here for the UK to, set a new course. I think the Labour government have probably made that about as difficult as they could possibly have done with some of the things that people like David Lammy have been saying about Donald Trump over the last few years, things like Sadiq Khan have been saying about him as well. I think, obviously that's quite difficult, but we have a really strong historic relationship with the United States, whether that comes to intelligence sharing, whether it comes to our defence relationship, whether it comes to our economic relationship. And I think actually a bit of dynamism in the world economy is what we need to see at the moment. When Labour came to power in the UK, they inherited the fastest growing economy in the G7. Now it's a flatlining economy. They inherited one with inflation down at 2%. That's already crept back up with predictions it's going to go further. And obviously that massive jobs tax, absolutely hammering businesses and employees and people looking for jobs here in the UK. Totally the opposite of what is happening in America. So I hope our government will learn some of those lessons about that positive can-do approach that President Trump is going to bring to the White House.
Well, you'd like to think that Rachel Reeves might take some notice of that. She's off to Davos, of course, at the moment this week, and I don't know what she's going to do there. But meanwhile, back home, she's got a department called the Value for Money Department. Apparently it's been called a waste of time and money by the Treasury officials who are supposedly overseeing it.
Yeah. So we've heard this is the MPs in the House of Commons, a Labour majority committee of Labour MPs, right? The Treasury Select Committee have come out and said actually the Office of Value for Money, they can't see what value it has, and it's just costing money. I mean, it's just absolutely bananas. We've ended up in this situation where the Labour Party are bringing forwards all of these sort of big ideas, but actually all we're seeing is it costing everybody an absolute fortune, and that's the danger, I think, of what we've seen with the Labour Party. There's a lot of things which were announced, but where is the actual meat in this? They're totally the opposite to what you see from President Trump in America at the moment. And I think that's going to be a real contrast, actually. People seeing a government which is really prepared to act in their national interests on one side in the United States, compared to what this Labour government's doing here in the UK, which is clearly just undermining us at every turn, whether it comes to those issues around the economy or what you've just been talking to your previous contributor about around those issues around grooming gangs.
Yeah, exactly right. And of course, she keeps sending out her deputy, Darren Jones, to talk on her behalf and on behalf of the Exchequer about this, that and the other. And yesterday, he was really struggling to understand the concept of if you tax very, very wealthy people who can live elsewhere in the world and they then leave the country and don't pay you any tax, you're actually losing money as opposed to just taxing them at a reasonable rate whereby they actually continue to pay the tax and stay where they are.
Well, you're quite right. I mean, it does feel that Darren Jones is in some form of very weirdly abusive relationship with the rest of the Labour Party at the moment, sent out on air to try and defend the utterly indefensible. I mean, you're quite right, Mike. The idea that you can... the truth is that these people were paying their tax on their UK income, right? Any money they made in the UK, they were paying it, right? What the Labour Party said is you must pay tax on any income you earn from anywhere in the world here in the UK. Well, they said, well, actually, no, we won't do that. Instead, we'll go abroad where we can just pay less tax. And it seems quite... I cannot comprehend how they don't understand that. So what they've actually done is raise a tax which actually costs us more money. I mean, what sort of government would do that? Actually harming our public services, right, in order to pursue a political, ideological objective. I mean, that has got the Labour Party written right through it. And I think whether it comes to that or so many of these other changes they've brought in, they need to reverse ferret as quickly as possible, because, whether it comes to that or whether it comes to things like the business tax reliefs they're absolutely going to hammer our farmers with, that's going to really affect our food security as well, and all sorts of other knock-on consequences, which we really need to have a proper think about in the long term. It's a sort of smash and grab from Rachel Reeves, which means that once you've taken it away, it's never going to be there again, right? It's actually, we need to be building something for the long term, and I think that's what Labour don't understand.
And meanwhile, they've got more problems on the horizon. Robert Jenrick calling for an investigation into the conflict of interest of the Attorney General, Lord Hermer. Not only do we now know that he made £30 30,000 quid representing Jerry Adams in a court case last year, but he now would appear to have been involved in defending some asylum seekers who came to the Chagos Islands from Sri Lanka and tried to gain asylum into Britain, while all the time making noises about selling or giving away the Chagos Islands with the added ticket price of 9 billion quid that we give to Mauritius.
I mean, you couldn't actually make it up with some of Keir Starmer's appointments. And this appointment of his Attorney General, just let's not forget, this was his hand-picked best mate, right? This was Emily Thornberry, who'd been there as a shadow, whatever you think of Emily Thornberry, right? She'd been there as a shadow Attorney General for about 8 years in various different roles there. And actually, Keir Starmer bulleted her and brought in his best mate, this Lord Herman chap, and gave him a peerage, seeing the House of Lords for life, etc., etc. And it looks like, yes, he's been making cash out of suing the British government over Jerry Adams. Now it's all of these links to the Chagos Islands, which he's been apparently doing the worst deal in history on, where apparently it looks like we're now going to pay another country to take off some British territory. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. And I really hope the government think again on this. We need to get them to think again on issue after issue after issue. They are clearly not up to it, and we've got to get rid of them as quickly as possible. That's going to be difficult, but in the intervening period, we just got to expose them and get people like Robert Jenrick, people like Kemi Badenoch are doing that day after day in Parliament, and we're just going to give them more power to do so. Yeah, we're doing a bit of that here as well, because we've got a nice clip today of Angela Rayner when she was in opposition, calling for all sorts of terrible things to happen to Tory ministers who used civil servants or misused civil servants for doing certain things. It turns out she's now under fire for misusing civil servants, believe it or not, moving her furniture into the Grace and Favour apartment at Admiralty House, and also asking them to clean it for her. I mean, it's just incredible. I literally, just a few days ago, Mike, I did a question about the Labour Party literally using civil service resources for Labour political propaganda. And they've actually, unbelievably, they actually did issue an official apology in that instance. But it's quite clear that they just see the state as their plaything, whereas it really should be what it really should be used for is in the interest of the British people. I'm really concerned about the way the Labour governments come in. It's just all over the place, and I think people are starting to see very quickly the wheels falling off Keir Starmer's administration, whether it comes to the winter fuel allowance and the attack on pensioners, whether it comes to the attack on small businesses with the inheritance tax changes, when it comes to attack on every worker in the country and their pay packet with these changes to national insurance. Whoever you are being hammered by Keir Starmer and the Labour Party. It really does feel like from the moment you wake up, they are trying to undermine you and your life in some way, shape or form. And then even on those issues which really affect traditionally Labour areas, like the issues around grooming gangs, they're not even then prepared to stand up for those communities. I really sometimes ask myself, what are they even for apart from for themselves? Yeah, it's a very good question. We'll see if we can answer it in the next couple of years. Richard Holden MP, Shadow Paymaster General, thank you very much indeed. We've got loads more coming up. Isabel Oakeshott in the next hour. We'll take more of your calls as well, and more of your messages of support for the Trump administration, Mark II.
happy Joe Biden proved to everyone that he has what it takes to be president. So now we have a new victim to defeat, Kamala Harris, L-Y-I-N apostrophe. Take a look at what happened. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up in the next hour, Isabel Oakeshot's going to be here. Morning, Mike, says Daniel. Praise the Lord that Donald Trump is back in town. I think we all feel a bit safer now. As to Khan, the mighty Brian Clough would say, you're very arrogant, son, for someone who has nothing to be arrogant about. I think that's right. And one from Chris in Newbury. Ed Davey and Liberal Left are in uproar because they know their house of cards of woke, net zero, pro-immigration, anti-West is about to crumble and be proven to be a huge contrick on the people. No longer will other countries' politicians be able to get away with lying to their people. The lie ends today, and they are terrified. Very true. Donald Trump inaugurated as the new president, 47th president, at 5 this afternoon. This is Morning Glory.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. 2 minutes past 9. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. 4 glorious hours of Morning Glory this morning, starting at 6 a.m, of course, all the way through the week, Monday to Friday, every single weekday morning. Wake up to this show. We woke up this morning with some very, very good news, and that, of course, is that Donald Trump is about to be inaugurated the 47th President of the United States of America. Yes, that's right. He's back.
We're going to end the reign of a failed and corrupt political establishment in Washington, a failed administration. We're not going to take it anymore.
We're not going to take it anymore. There's a song to that effect as well, isn't there? Coming up, we're going to speak to Isabel Oakeshott, Talks International editor, of course, because not only is Trump being inaugurated today, he's going to action 200 executive orders, which is going to get rid of all manner of nonsense that Joe Biden introduced into the American economy, including all of that DEI nonsense, you know, diversity, equity and inclusion. He's taking it out of the monarchy, of the military. He's taking it out of business. He's taking it out of the countryside. He's taking it out of all public sector jobs. He's just not going to take it anymore. He's also going to come down hard on the illegal smuggling gangs who are bringing thousands upon thousands of people in to the United States every single hour. Millions of people have come illegally. He's going to start kicking them all out of the country. He's also, of course, going to be setting his stall out for how the economy is going to be built around the new presidential office in the White House. And, of course, he's going to continue putting pressure on both parties in the Middle East to get more hostages released. 3 were released yesterday, all over the front pages, including the British hostage, 28-year-old Emily Damari, who hugs her mother for the first time yesterday, and she's speaking today after 471 days being held captive beneath the streets of Gaza in a hellhole of a tunnel. Absolutely unbelievable stuff. Rachel Reeves, meanwhile, has jetted off to Davos. Nobody knows what she's going to be doing. Angela Rayner has been accused of breaching the ministerial code, and there's now calls for the Attorney General to be investigated because of what he's now got as a conflict of interest, not just about Jerry Adams, but also about the Chagos Islands. And get this, by the way, thousands of people with self-diagnosed mental health conditions are using a £69,000 a year disability benefit scheme following a rise in advice they've been getting from people who call themselves ADHD sickfluencers. Unbelievable stuff. We're paying out 258 million quid to these people. Can you believe it? It's 5 past 9. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on.
We're not going to take it anymore.
And I think that's going to be our mantra, isn't it? I mean, if only. The people are getting so worked up today here, listening to this show, watching it. People are so enthusiastic because we have got the world's worst Prime Minister. It's so dull. It's so ridiculous. He's not in Washington, D.C., where he should be because he wasn't invited. Instead, he's going to be sitting in Downing Street in a dark room, presumably with a portrait of somebody over his head who isn't British, thinking, where did it all go wrong? Isabel Oakeshott's here. Isabel, very good morning to you.
Not going to take it anymore. I mean, how much do we all feel like that right now?
Isn't it
we
true?
don't want to take it anymore, except we have to take it because there's no opportunity to boot this sorry lot out.
Yes, but I think just even the advent of Trump Mark II is going to have an effect on everybody, I think, in the world, whether it's the EU, whether it's the UK government. You know, they're all going to have to be a bit more kind of, I don't know, careful about the kinds of things that they get up to, because look at how he's already changed, you know, corporate America. Wall Street has done away with all the DEI stuff. You know, he's going to get rid of it in the military. There's going to be a much different atmosphere, I think, in the Western world.
Absolutely, and I think we all know that what happens in America does completely percolate over here. Obviously, there'll be tremendous resistance from our Labour-led government to falling in any way into line with what Trump's doing over there. But I still think it will have a seismic effect culturally in the UK and will give a huge boost to parties in the UK that don't stand for any of that stuff, to all those who support the whole we're not going to take this anymore thing. I think perhaps net zero is one of the most obvious areas in which Trump's influence will quite significantly undermine the kind of medium to long-term value of all those vested interests and companies that are feeding off the net zero frenzy, which Mad Ed Miliband is still peddling to the absolute best of his ability. On the DEI thing, I mean, it'd be nice to think, wouldn't it, that would affect the attitude to that amongst corporate UK, I think that they'll be a bit slower. In fact, they'll probably make an absolute point of holding on to all of this stuff just out of sheer anti-Trumpery. But it's super interesting to look at the atmosphere surrounding Trump's inauguration today, this time round versus last time round. You know, an absolute sense this time round that he is the legitimate person. He's got there properly, not as a result of some completely ludicrous fictional Russian collusion, and that there is a sort of revolutionary feeling about this. The establishment in America has just damn well had to accept, and more than that, if they're not going to embrace it, they're at least going to make the kind of noises that suggest that they are going to more than lean into it.
Absolutely right, because apparently I'm told the hosts on CNN this morning are looking a bit puce and not looking terribly happy about what they're going to have to cover this afternoon. The BBC yesterday, Laura Kunsberg, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. You know, not only was she continuing to refuse to admit that Hamas was a terrorist organisation, kept referring to it as an organisation prescribed by many countries in the world, she then started kind of quizzing anyone that was talking about Donald Trump about, well, how on earth could anybody work with him? He's dangerous. He's you know, he's unpredictable. Can you believe anything he says? She was so disappointed, speaking to Fiona Hill, who used to be Theresa May's, you know, chief of staff, when she said to her, you know, what was he like to deal with? And Fiona Hill said, well, actually, we found him to be very reasonable. We found him to be very much on top of his brief. He knew exactly what we wanted to talk about. And when we talked about defence, he was very good on that. You know, and Kunsberg's face was a picture. She was like, she couldn't quite believe that could be the man that she hates.
Well, I mean, maybe the Labour lot won't have an awful lot of interaction with him. I mean, of course, he's going to have to go through the motions. He's not going to be rude to our UK government. But at the same time, I don't think that Donald Trump is going to actively seek out opportunities who would to hang out with Keir Starmer. And I mean, what a humiliation, really, it is for the Prime Minister that Nigel Farage is at that inauguration and Keir Starmer, is not. And it will be super interesting this week to see what happens with the Chagos deal.
Yes.
Because I know that that Farage has been trying and working extremely hard to get the US administration to engage with the detail of this truly lousy, wretched, treasonous deal. And I think that's been quite challenging because naturally they've got many, many, many big fish to fry. But I sense that because there was a setback on the Chagos deal at the end of last week, it is looking a little bit more optimistic and positive that Trump's people have now properly engaged with this disaster, looming disaster. And there's a great deal of reason to hope that it may be torn up by the new administration. Yeah. Again, it would be a massive humiliation for Starmer.
Of course it would. Let's have a look at what happened last night. It's a real feel-good factor in America right now, particularly in Washington, D.C. As you say, Nigel Farage is there, Nick Candy's there, Liz Truss is there. There's a whole bunch of British people from the right of politics who are having a great time. Thank you very much indeed. Check this out.
Tomorrow at noon, the curtain closes on 4 long years of American decline, and we begin a brand new day of American strength and prosperity, dignity and pride. Bringing it all back. Once and for all, we're going to end the reign of a failed and corrupt political establishment in Washington, a failed administration. We're not going to take it anymore. We're going to stop the invasion of our borders. We're going to reclaim our wealth. We're going to unlock the liquid gold that's right under our feet, liquid gold. We're going to bring back law and order to our cities. We're going to restore patriotism to our schools, get radical left, woke ideologies the hell out of our military and out of our government. And we are going to make America great again.
I genuinely think that he is. I mean, it's a feel-good thing, isn't it? So much of politics for me is about confidence. It's about, you know, confidence in the country, pride in the country, which we've sort of lost here, haven't we?
Oh, 100%. I mean, which one of those things that he just rattled off isn't something that we would all want for the UK? You know, the UK is crying out for every single one of the changes that he promised to make. And this time round, he's going to have a bit more leeway because he controls so much more of the machinery of government. So I really think we're on the cusp of something pretty exciting over there. And I think that it will really, as we were saying at the beginning of this conversation, boost those who are pushing for a similar agenda here in the UK. I mean, who doesn't want liquid gold? We want liquid gold in the UK too.
Exactly. And I mean, a story in the Telegraph today about Santander, who are reportedly considering leaving Britain because of excessive red tape. I mean, we all know what that feels like, but it could affect 14 million customers and affect tens of thousands of staff because they're thinking of literally just upping sticks and moving to another country. So much so that they're joining what can only be described as an avalanche of people leaving the country. And the Labour government don't seem to realise that that's happening.
Well, I mean, it's just not surprising at all, is it? If you make your own country a hostile place for employers, for wealth creators, for risk takers, and even just for people who are just working really, really hard in their chosen field and feel that far too much of what they are earning is going to bad causes, then people will leave. You know, we live in a very mobile world these days. Some of our viewers and listeners may have noticed that there was some media coverage over the weekend about the fact that I myself am currently based in the Middle East. And one of the reasons I've left is because of Labour's VAT policy on school fees. I've got 3 children at private schools, and that was actually just the final straw for me. I can't pay that VAT on school fees. So I've done what so many thousands of other people have done, and I've looked for an alternative. And there are places in the world where things actually work. There isn't very much crime at all. The sun shines and people are civilized to each other. And why not exercise that freedom to move if you can?
Right. And loads of people are doing it. I mean, I was watching Darren Jones yesterday being interviewed on various different programmes in the morning, and he didn't seem to understand. This is, you know, the Chancellor of the Exchequer's deputy, effectively. She's in Davos, so as in his words, not available, so he talks on her behalf. And he didn't seem to fully understand the fact that if you start taxing people to the point where they are considering leaving the country because that tax is so high, he didn't seem to grasp the fact that you don't actually end up with more money, you end up with less money because they tend to leave and they tend to have the ability to live in other places and they no longer pay tax. And this whole non-dom argument that they made, where they said they were going to make billions of pounds from these very wealthy individuals, hasn't come to pass because it turns out they've all gone.
Well, I mean, how would you not understand that? To me, that says that these decision makers don't spend nearly enough time around the super rich.
Right.
The super rich are not super rich because they just toss their money around, you know, willy-nilly. They're super rich because they are smart about their assets. And the idea that non-doms are just going to say, oh, fine then, you're just about to wallop me with a load more tax, so I'm just going to sit in the UK and pay your pernicious tax. Of course not. They just move. You know, for many people in that non-dom category, their attitude, whether we like it or not, whether we approve of this, is they sort of see countries like hotels. And if it comes to the point that you are paying 6-star prices for a 3 or 2-star hotel, you just move hotels. That's their psychology. So they will just leave the UK. They have left the UK. That was one of the stupidest blunders of many blunders that this government has made. And I can tell you one of the other cohorts that's leaving in droves, and it's at the other end of the spectrum. It's actually teachers. Teachers from the UK who are not paid well in the UK, working in really terrible circumstances, many of them in the roughest, most deprived schools, where discipline is an ever constant challenge, and it's just a rubbish job for many people. Well, they can come over to places like the Middle East and work in great British schools following the British curriculum and be paid tax-free. And do you know what? They get their accommodation paid for, and they also get a discount or even free education for their kids. Once again, it's a no-brainer.
And do you know what's interesting as well? I've only just thought of this, talking about this. My daughter, who, as you know, also lives in the Middle East, she has a sort of cohort of about 6 friends that all graduated at the same time from university. And she occasionally gets together with them. They're at that age when they're sort of getting married to different people and stuff. Not one of them lives in Britain. Not one.
And this is a tragedy.
And they're all professionals, and they're all making good money, and they're all in interesting jobs around the world.
It's a tragedy. I don't want to be down on our country. You know, the UK is a fantastic, amazing country. And here's the encouraging thing. You know, I feel like I'm international now. You know, my title at Talk is International Editor.
We didn't know it was going to lead to this, but there we are.
I'm obviously talking to people all the time. And Britain is still held in tremendous regard.
Yeah.
But there's also a real sense of sadness. And people do see from the outside, people do see what is happening to our country. The single thing they say most often is about violence and crime. That's the fear that they've got. I don't want the younger generations to feel that they can't build a future in Britain. But that is the mood amongst many, many young people, whether it's in their early 20s, their late 20s, or even their early 30s. They're just thinking, you know what, I'm just going to opt out of this for a bit because it isn't the place where I'm going to be able to build the best future for myself. I think we can turn that all around, by the way, but not under this government, hopefully under totally more Trump-like administration.
It did happen before. It happened in the 70s before Margaret Thatcher came in, and then people started coming back as they saw the economy, preparing itself for a new era. And as people, suddenly found jobs in the city and the Big Bang and everything happened. Chloe has sent us this. She says, Mike, my son's 30 and his wife and he are moving to Washington in the USA in June. They've just sold their house. They can't wait to leave the UK. Hard-working, responsible people who can see this country is on the slide. And much of that is also to do with people. You say crime, which is right and true. People are fed up with it, but also they're fed up with what they see as a country that doesn't reward success, and it actually rewards failure. It rewards people who come here from other countries illegally. It rewards people who don't want to go to work. I mean, a story in the Telegraph today, and I know it's an unusually kind of niche story, but apparently there's something called the Access to Work scheme, which allows claimants to claim £69,000 a year for equipment and support, including work coaches, noise-cancelling headphones, Apple smartwatches. The budget for this has soared by 40% in 2 years. It's now £258 million, this budget, and it's generally being used by people who are claiming they're suffering from ADHD.
Well, I mean, this is just absolutely outrageous. I'm sure ADHD is very real for some people. Yeah. But frankly, even if it is real for some people, however bad their case, I don't think the taxpayer should be funding them to have ear pods and noise-cancelling headphones. Sorry, that's on you. Most of us have to look after ourselves when we have things that don't go entirely to plan. And I'm sure those people are entitled to a bunch of other benefits too. This is the kind of thing that really, really gets hard-working people. They've got only now, 10 days in which they've got to pay their tax, their self-assessment. People who are running small businesses, self-employed freelancers. And when they send that money to HMRC, they're not able to think to themselves, well, that's fine because I'm paying for a really good NHS. I want to help people who are genuinely disabled. I really want to help the homeless, all of that. They're thinking to themselves, a growing number of people, well, that's so not fine because my money is just being squandered and abused and I am being ripped off by a totally profligate state and an awful lot of people who are taking benefits who do not actually need them. And that only undermines things for a minority of people who genuinely need and deserve our support.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. Isabel, thank you very much indeed. Isabel Oakeshott, Talk's international editor. I've got this from Don, who says he's jealous, Don, in Port Talbot. Being British right now and looking at the US is like being a fat kid on a diet. We desperately want a slice of that American pie, but we can't have any. Instead, we get the cold salad that is Keir Starmer and his front bench of wilted lettuce. Absolutely right. Love the show. Thank you, jealous Don. Let's get a voice note from Nick.
Morning, Mike. Nick in Eastbourne. So, on the day of Trump's inauguration, You've got the MSM in the form of ITV's breakfast show interviewing Brian Cox, who says he's not going to spend much more time in America because of Trump's presidency. Absolutely giggling and making fun of him, saying what a dreadful president he'll be. I mean, if anything illustrates more clearly their bias, it's that. It was a disgrace. Who cares what Brian Cox thinks? And the presenters were, quite frankly, no better. This is the day of the inauguration. He won the popular vote. Anyway, good show, of course. I always watch you. I just happened to chance on this utter nonsense.
Nick, very, very well said. I'll let you off for peeking at what ITV did. But yeah, it is ridiculous, isn't it? Completely nutty mad. It's the same as Laura Kuenssberg yesterday. She couldn't get over herself, mentioning that, you know, he's a convicted felon. He's nasty. He's horrible. He's not a very nice man. How can you trust him? How can you believe a word he says? Absolutely incredible. Alan in Middlesbrough says this: it's a brilliant morning and a day of hope. But isn't it a really sad indictment of the state of our country that it takes a democratically elected outcome 4,000 miles from these shores to impart that hope to see a genuine change, not the fixing the foundations or working people change, but a change to old school values based on decency. Sorry, I've sort of gone out of the voice there. But a change to old school values based on decency. Exactly right. Should we have another look at Starmer's latest promo and see if you can make any sense of this? Have a look, because this is what he said just over the weekend, having been to Ukraine to give away another $4.5 billion, having been to Poland to do God knows what, apart from getting a photo opportunity at Auschwitz, which was in pretty poor taste. He had this to say for himself.
I grew up in an ordinary, hard-working family. We didn't have much, but we did know that there was a contract in Britain, that if you worked hard and did the right thing, then in return, the country would provide you with the security and the opportunity to get on in life.
And how did you get on in life? Not very well, really. You're now the worst Prime Minister in the history of Great Britain. How proud your parents would be. You know, Keir, what are you doing? What are you thinking? It's 9:24.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:28. I'm Mike Graham. Cooperman says this: small C Conservatives want to lift people up to be closer to the wealthy, but that's hard. The left work hard to drag the wealthy down, closer to the level of the poorest, because that's easier, and they hate achievement. It's absolutely right. Morning, Mike, says Sue from Farncombe. Love your show. Please, can we have a Donald Trump? Yeah, easier said than done. Hi, Mike, says Leslie in Macclesfield. What a difference with Trump's speech. Uplifting, pride, optimistic, in comparison to Starmer's doom and gloom about, you know, when I was growing up, we didn't have much. Yeah, well, he's trying to make sure that none of us have much the way things are going. Let's talk to Paige Menges, owner of Phoenix-style shops, because a story that came out a little bit earlier over the weekend is about this shoplifting gang committing a reign of terror in a part of Surrey, just south of London. They're basically taking pretty much anything they want to put their hands upon. It's called Surrey's Beverly Hills because at the end of the day, it's Phoenix style in the Surrey town of Cobham. She's now installed in her flagship boutique latest CCTV along with anti-theft devices, but is it actually working? We'll find out. Paige, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, not bad at all. I mean, it's a real blight on society, this shoplifting lark. I was just reading earlier on this morning about another story about two asylum seekers who went to Bluewater and were just nicking sort of Coach handbags and all sorts of really high-end stuff. And they've kind of been just left free to go because they can't do anything with them.
No, I know. I mean, this wasn't just petty theft. It was deliberate and targeted. They came into our stores, they knew exactly what they wanted, and they came armed with tools to cut the wires that secure our bags down.
Right.
So, you know, my staff are trained not to approach these people because they could seriously harm them.
Well, they're violent, aren't they, as well?
Yeah. They're criminals. They're proper criminals.
So has your putting in of the CCTV had any effect? Because, you know, that doesn't always work either, does it?
I have the most incredible CCTV, and if you look at the CCTV images, you can see exactly their faces.
Right.
But the police are saying that it's not that good. It wasn't good enough for them.
Not good enough for them. So what sort of what would they prefer? They want you to follow them around with an iPhone or something?
I don't know.
I mean, it is amazing, isn't it? I mean, so the police, it would seem, don't particularly care much about shoplifting. They give you a crime number.
No, the Met have not, because I've got a store in Wimbledon and one in Cobham. The Met haven't even come to the Wimbledon store to take a statement. The Surrey police did come 2.5 days later to take my statements because I've made such a fuss on Instagram.
Yeah.
That's what they actually said to me.
Yes.
So that's
well,
what
that's what they care about. I mean, I had the same problem when I had my phone stolen. They didn't care until I wrote about it in the Daily Telegraph, and then suddenly they were interested in what they were going to do for me. They still didn't do anything, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
So how much is this costing you? I mean, do you have insurance if something gets stolen, or what?
Yes, we do, and hopefully the insurance will pay out for this. But it's, you know, it's everything else that happens. My staff are now frightened. You know, the local community are also up in arms. They're annoyed, and it's not only our store. All the stores are being targeted, but it's turned from someone just slipping a T-shirt into a handbag to people coming with tools to disarm security. So it's not just petty theft.
Right. It's organised, isn't it?
It's organised, yeah.
And I mean, you may end up, I suppose, like some of these watch shops in Oxford Street, where you have basically, sort of bodyguards behind a locked door. And if you want to go,
I do now. I have hired private security, which actually makes me think, what am I paying business rates for, which are about to go up?
Right.
because the police can't help give us security, so I have to go and pay private security to come.
Right. And so have you actually had to lock, have you taken to locking the front door yet or not?
Yeah, they're locked, and we have security guards.
Right. And presumably that has an effect on what you can sell, because people like to wander into a shop, don't they, and sort of look around.
Exactly. These are small little local stores in tiny little villages, you know, and people just wander in and everyone knows each other. So it's, you know, the fact that they now have to ring a bell to come into the door and
it's just awful, isn't it? And presumably, I mean, your insurance will go up if you have to keep claiming, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. And, I mean, you can see quite clearly who these individuals are. I can't understand why the police are not interested in going after them.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that making all this noise, that it'll drive them to do something. But
right. You'd like to think so. And some of these bags are worth an awful lot of money, so presumably this is all being driven by their ability to resell them somewhere.
Yeah, so they knew exactly. I'm sorry.
No, go on.
They knew exactly what they were taking. They came in, and the bags that they were taking were sort of the really high-end luxury ones, like Chanel.
Right.
And they know that they can get a really good price selling them.
Yeah.
Selling them on.
And can you, I mean, they're quite, I mean, not rare, but I mean, they're quite easy to spot, these bags, aren't they? I mean, if people see them, what can they do if they see them on the internet being sold?
They could. Oh yeah, sorry. They can contact us, because yes, if you do see them, you know, all these bags have got little codes inside them. So they all have unique codes, so you can sort of identify them.
Okay. And I mean, I presume it's not like, I mean, some of them are worth more than watches, but I mean, could you register them or something and make it impossible for them to be resold?
I don't know how I do that.
Really, can you?
No.
But you know how people, I mean, people tell me, not that I have one, but people say that if a Rolex gets reported stolen, you basically can never take it back to a Rolex dealer to have a look at it, because they'll say, well, this is a stolen watch and we're going to take it off you.
We haven't got to that point yet with luxury handbags, but I think it's heading that way.
Right.
They're going to have some sort of security in them so they can identify them. I think they do have them now for the new ones, but most of the bags that I sell are vintage, so they're about sort of 10, 20 years old.
I mean, that's the other thing that I find talking to people now about walking around just in London, is if you have a bag that's worth, I mean, you had 4 bags stolen worth more than £17,000. If you've got a Chanel bag that's worth £4,000 or £5,000, you wouldn't be walking around in London with it, would you? In case somebody just nicked it off you.
No, I know. This is what's happened.
Right. And this is the country we now live in. It's absolutely shocking. Listen, Paige, I wish you luck. I hope you get the police to at least do something for you as a result of being on here. We'll keep in touch and see how we get on. Paige Menger's there, owner of Phoenix Style Shops down in Cobham. Unbelievable stuff, right? In the space of 24 hours, both of her shops were targeted by the same 2 robbers who actually used wire cutters to slice through cables and steal the bags. And the police don't, I mean, I can see who's done it. The police are not interested. You know who that is? You know, tell the cops or tell Paige. Get in touch, Phoenix Style. 0344 499 1000. Good morning, says Margaret, currently in Tunisia. As Starmer and Lammy are so keen on selling off British lands, perhaps they could sell off the UK and we could become a state of America. Just a thought. Yeah, I think a lot of people would be happy with that. Get Donald Trump in charge, sort everything out. Let's get a voice note from Shirley.
Good morning, Mike. It's Shirley here in the Cotswolds. Mike, isn't it just wonderful to have fun back in the world with Trump and co? I watched some of it on TV last night on the news, and it's just so great, him dancing around to the village people. The lefties are all sucking on lemons today. I am absolutely loving it. I'm going out for a celebratory lunch with the girls, then I've got the popcorn in, and I'm going to be glued to that TV all evening. Bring him on. Trump and the glamour is all back in the White House. I blooming love it. Have a lovely day, Mike. Bye.
Well done, Shirley. Have a great lunch, and don't overdo it, because you want to watch the convention, not convention, the inauguration. And you watch it right here on talkTV, of course. 0344 499 1000. Dean from Dagenham. The Don is back. God bless America and the UK. The so-called progressives are squirming today. Yeah, the media class as well. Absolutely hate it. We just heard about how GMB has got Brian Cox on moaning and groaning about how terrible Donald Trump's going to be. Who cares what he thinks? It's 9:37.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Coming up to 9:40, I'm Mike Graham. Welcome back to Morning Glory, here with you for 4 glorious hours every single weekday morning, 6 to 10. And today, it's a particularly glorious morning because we are looking forward to, at 5 o'clock this afternoon, live on the Jeremy Kyle Show, the inauguration and the speech which Donald Trump will make, of course, welcoming himself as the 47th President of the United States of America. And Stuart, by comparison, says this from Bradford. That Starmer clip is from the party political broadcast brigade, was robotic, and it's just him building himself up. The guy is deluded. Let's hear from Sue on Labour.
Hi Mike, this is Sue in Lee. Great show as always. I'm a small business owner. I run an IT business. We have put a hold on employment, on recruitment. We've also put a hold on pay rises. I don't earn a huge wage myself. I'm not above the 20% bracket. I was also in the process of buying 2 properties in the Lake District for a new business venture. We're now considering pulling out of that just because of the taxes. The stamp duty, it means we've got to find several £1,000s extra. And I just don't want to give my money, my hard-earned money, to the government for all these bad causes.
Sue, I don't blame you, and I think you will speak for an awful lot of small business owners who are now sort of reining it in a little bit, pulling in their horns, because they know that the future is not going to be better. It's going to be worse, because things are going to get worse in April. A lot of the national insurance fees are going to go up in April as opposed to now. A lot of the other taxes are going to kick in the new financial year, and people are feeling very, very uncertain about their own futures, and they're certainly not going to invest in anything, and they're certainly not going to hire new people. And that seems to be something that the Labour government doesn't seem to understand. You know, Rachel Reeves is in Davos talking to, you know, world leaders and influential people from the banking business and all of that. But that doesn't make any difference to the ordinary people working hard in this country. And, you know, it seems as though they don't care. That's what it seems like, I must say that. Dr. Melanie Garson is here with us. She's Associate Professor at the Political Science Department in UCL here in London. Let's talk about Donald Trump. Dr. Melanie, very good morning.
Good morning, Frank. How are you?
Yeah, very well indeed. Nice to see you. I mean, I've been quite surprised. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised, but really the depth of joy and sort of good feelings from my audience, from the people watching and people listening to this show this morning, is off the scale. Everybody's really, really happy. It's the first time I've heard so many happy people in this country for a very long time.
Oh, well, everybody likes a bit of glitz and glamour, and certainly this inauguration is promising to be that. Whilst we certainly here in the UK can do pomp and circumstance, well, it's certainly understated by what looks like is being planned over the next day or so over in DC.
Yeah, true. But it's also the promise of what he wants to do politically as well, and what he's going to do to bring America back, if you like, from where it's been over the past 4 years, run by Joe Biden and quite a woke kind of administration, right?
Absolutely, and I think you know, the rhetoric and the sort of buzz of a dawn of a new day, whether that's many of the people here in the UK sort of living vicariously through that energy that's being projected. You know, there's a lot of big promise, and there's a lot of you know, the talk of everyone's waiting to see what will be in the 100 to 200 executive orders that are slated to be signed this afternoon, that is supposed to show short order change and how that will influence potential alliances and partners.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a list of some of the things he wants to do. He's going to designate cartels as foreign terrorist organisations. The military will be directed to construct a new phase of the border wall. He's going to terminate Joe Biden's orders on energy drilling restrictions, so a kind of it's throwing away the whole net zero plan, pausing all offshore wind leases, ending DEI hiring practices in the federal government, and on and on and on, withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accord again. And of course, one of the things that he's got with him now is a much more confident presidential team, hasn't he? Because when he first got in 2016, he didn't really know the ropes, he didn't really know the swamp that well, as he called it. Whereas now, I think he's a more mature politician, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, he knows the ropes. He knows where things can trip him up. He's surrounded himself with a mixture in his team, and we saw that, you know, from the confirmation hearings that were going on last week. Some of them have great experience, but he's got a very, very, very strong mandate this time, even stronger than last time, with you know, much more cross-cutting than people imagine it to be.
Yeah, and he's got some very experienced people in there. He's got Elon Musk, who's a bit of an unknown quantity. Nobody's quite sure exactly what his role is going to be. But it's a very glamorous, as you say, and not just in the sense of how it looks. It's kind of in the feel of it is very, very different to the Biden administration.
Absolutely. I mean, although, you know, the Biden administration did have committees that worked with private partnerships, I think that, you know, however, it's certainly not altruistic, maybe not necessarily, you know, occasionally but beyond politics, but the way that certainly some big tech have, you know, both financially thrown their lot in behind inaugural activities, and certainly are seeking to make sure that they're part of what they believe to be a big innovation push over the next few months. And, you know, they all want a part of it.
They do. What do you think it means for us, and Keir Starmer in particular?
Well, you know, the elusive deal that the UK and has been seeking with the US will become even more important, particularly with, you know, to see where they perceive the UK to land on this tariff scale that may come in. You know, Donald Trump, President Trump, has made no promises of preference to any particular nation above others, and you know, Keir Starmer and David Lammy in particular have had to roll back on some pretty harsh statements, and there'll be some diplomatic catching up to do.
Yeah, well, certainly after Sadiq Khan at the weekend declared, you know, the rise of fascism and the far right taking over the world, and how we have to be all careful about it. I mean, even he's been slapped down by the cabinet.
Absolutely. And, you know, this is going to be the leader. It's a strong leader, strong mandate. And the UK is going to have to, work within the framework, certainly on a larger level, whether that goes into funding into NATO, into looking at our own defence establishment. And it should be a real call for the UK to actually critically look at where its vision is for itself in the world, how we've got, defence industrial review, industrial, strategy review, to really look at how that works to meet the UK's interests.
Yes, it's going to be interesting to see how the US treats the UK government, I guess, in the next coming days. We shall see. Good to talk to you. Dr. Melanie Garson there, Associate Professor of Political Science at UCL, right here in London. Barry says this: I sold a property in Spain recently. I have funds sitting in euros and I'm not prepared to convert them to sterling. A difficult decision, but I think the UK is going to drop quicker than the EU with this mob in charge. You may well be right, Barry. Let's talk to Tracy in Northampton. Hi, Tracy.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
What can I do for you?
You had a caller on earlier, and she took the words right out of my mouth. She said, what it would be like to have a prime minister like that you're proud of, that you would stand in that crowd and cheer him and be proud to have this prime minister. What have we got?
I know.
Keir
Shocking.
Starmer.
I know.
It's just... He needs to go. He's pathetic. Do you know what? I'm ashamed to be English. I'm ashamed to be British.
Yeah.
Of what we're going through at the moment, because he is going to take this country to the dogs.
Yeah. He's already halfway there, isn't he?
Well, I'd say he's more than halfway there. No one likes him.
Yeah.
Why don't the man listen? And he got a brain.
I don't think he has.
We don't like you. We don't like you. We don't like what you're doing. Be like Trump. Do you know what? I'd love to be in America. I would love it to be there amongst the crowd and the proud.
Something to look forward to. Something to look forward to as well, right?
Oh, I'd be so proud and like. Do you know, it makes you want to move.
Yeah, it does.
It does. It really wants to make you get out of this country.
Yeah. No, it's true.
My sister's done it because she said that she can't stand being here anymore.
Right, where's she gone?
Okay, she's only gone to Spain.
Right.
Rebecca, she bought a house out there.
Right.
She's loving it. Loving it.
Yeah.
Never come back here.
No.
But
I say that to people as well. People and friends of mine who have moved away, and they come back for a trip and they go, God, it's really changed, isn't it? It's awful. And that's what they say. Listen, Tracy, thank you so much. Listen, we've got something to look forward to, because Donald Trump, I think, is worth looking forward to, because he will change an awful lot of what we do, I think, as well. Peter in Suffolk says, morning, Mike. It's great to hear your comments on Trump's return, but the problem is it makes me even more depressed about the clowns running our country. I know. It just kind of brings it home and focuses your brain on how useless Starmer is, doesn't it? Let's get a voice note from Chris.
Hi, Mike. Chris from Suffolk. Great show. I'm a long-time supporter of Trump since before the 2016 election, so it's a delight to see him return to the White House today. I just think it's interesting looking at the contrast in terms of the attitude of the mainstream liberal media towards a guy who actually comes in and delivers on promises that he made in the election and the best part of 80 million people voted for. You contrast that to what we're faced with in this country, that old used wet wipe that we've got in number 10, who, to put it politely, won an election but by deception, and for whom the British people that he's supposed to serve seem to feature bottom of the list in every single decision he makes. Anyway, keep up the good work, mate.
Yeah. Chris, I couldn't agree with you more. And one of the reasons Trump is so successful and why people like him so much is because he does have pride in his country. He wants to put the pride back in America, because they've had Biden, and that hasn't been great for them either. So now they're on the comeback trail, and I think that's brilliant. And, I mean, what I can say to you is Joe Biden is not on the comeback trail. He's walking out the door. He's heading off into the sunset, and here he is. You have to turn him around to show him which way the sunset is. He's walking on sand here, and not water, and he doesn't appear to be able to lift his feet up. You can't actually see them at the moment, but this is a guy that's been running the free world for the last 4 years. He's literally struggling to put one foot in front of another. For heaven's sake. Cheerio, Joe. Oh, hang on, nearly fell over there. Nope. Come on. Come on, Joe. Just a few more steps, and we'll get in the car. Go on. Go on. Nope. Nearly went again. Never mind. Jesus Christ. Anyway, we'll be back after this.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. Julie Hartley-Brewer here very shortly, within the next 3 minutes or so. Ian says this: morning, Mike. For all the doubters, why don't we give the Trump administration 6 months, then compare and contrast with Starmer's first 6 months, then compare and contrast again? Let that story tell itself. I think so. I awoke, says Julian in Coventry, to the sound of Trump's speech this morning. It made me feel depressed and envious of the fact that we have had 14 years of woke under the Conservatives, and now we have another 4 years of hard woke under the Socialists. So envious of the United States of America. Well, there's no reason to be envious, because you can share in it all right here, starting right now.
We can now officially project that Donald Trump will become the 47th president of the United States. He will be going back to the White House.
Fight for you, for your family, and your future with every breath in my body.
We're never going to stop fighting for you, for your dreams, for the future of your children. We're going to lead the greatest comeback in American history under Donald Trump's leadership.
God spared my life for a reason. To restore America to greatness. Together we can truly make America great again.
"47. You know, interestingly enough, it is the world's most frequently occurring random number, 47, which is another story altogether, but I can tell you about that tomorrow. I've also got this for you. This is my 50p piece that I showed you earlier on in the show, which I discovered was made in 2020. I didn't even know that it was made in 2020, but apparently it was struck by the Royal Mint to commemorate our leaving the European Union, right? And what I didn't know was that it's got the Queen's head on the back, and on the front it's got a phrase, "Diversity built Britain." What on earth is that about, and what's it for? Unbelievable stuff. How about this? Morning, Mike, says G in Birmingham. I think the next general election for the UK will be interesting. If Trump's war on woke and illegal immigration works, Reform can point and say the UK can do better than Labour and the Tories if we return to our core values and put this country first. Exciting times. Have a great week. Absolutely right. And Michelle says this: Mike, looking forward to the inauguration today, but I can't help seethe secretly with jealousy. I just hope it's the beginning of real change and we don't end up at war with the USA, as I wouldn't put anything past our useless government. I don't think that's going to happen. But certainly we'll wait and see when the first meeting is arranged between Sir Keir Starmer and Donald Trump. Julie is here. Very good morning to you.
Good morning. Yeah, do you know what? I feel quite optimistic. Look, I'm not going to lie. I'm a bit trepidatious about some of the things that Donald Trump would do.
You can
watching a lot of his rally yesterday, a lot of the things that he says he's going to be doing, the executive orders, 100 to 200 today. I mean, I'm like,
that's all good.
The trans stuff, drill, baby, drill, borders, the DI. I mean, net zero, deportation. Yeah, I'd love to have a little bit of that. We're normally downstream.
Yes.
So I'm hoping, but we've, of course, got stuck with sort of the anti-Trump.
Yes, the anti-Trump. Who's going to be presumably sitting in Downing Street, in his little study, watching it all on television.
He probably just doesn't think it's